Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I see they went live a little earlier than we expected, so let's see what happens here. I don't know if this is not for the hearing or what. Are they late for the hearing or what? So here we are. Let me boost it for us if I can.
Yes.
Just give me a second. There we go. Okay. Can you hear? Just quickly. Just busy with something here as well.
Okay. I allowed in an individual by the name of Manfed Schenk. Okay, so he's going to be allowed to be in the hearing. I guess because
So the hearing is now.
because he's an expert who's going to testify.
So they were late for the hearing.
About what his opinion is about the state's expert. So as a result of that, he needs to hear what that opinion is, and then he'll be. I assume he may be called to testify by the defense after you're done with your witness.
Okay, so I've got this. Sorry, I'm just setting a few things up. They caught me off guard a little because I thought, are they starting now? But they're starting the hearing. Damn.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's boost it. Let's boost it.
So in a way, you're basically saying we want to strike him in its entirety at one, and alternatively, at least part of his opinions. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Shanahan?
That's right.
Welcome everyone to day 4, the morning session, but
One
this is
second.
actually
And
first the hearing.
Your motion, I've always sort of freaked out about the, maybe it's a kind of bad word to use,
Yeah.
about the ability to object to somebody who you haven't heard testimony from or seen a report from. In any event.
We do have a report.
I thought you did not have a report.
We have a report in the form of a PowerPoint presentation.
And what was that turned over to y'all?
I believe the states have received. Oh, I'm
And,
sorry.
and I guess
Oh, are we speaking about our report or the state's report?
the state's expert.
Sound is
State's
on.
expert report we have in the form of a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, and you received that when?
I think the final, it actually existed in a couple different forms. I think there was an initial draft, and then we received more recently what was a final draft, and I couldn't say exactly what the
Janine
date
says,
was.
who are they wanting to
In the
strike?
last 60 days, is that?
Okay, so you gave it to them way early, basically.
Whoever's the
Yes,
cell
Your Honor.
phone
And
ping
all the
dude.
subsequent versions, I know there was one maybe 2 weeks
I
ago
think
that
it's
was in
that,
defense, and the only changes in that one was a typo.
Ruiz, hold
on. All right.
And then prior to that, just cleaning it up.
I think it's
Pretty
witness
good.
Juan Ruiz and his cell phone ping data. I think that's what Eduardo was
And
complaining
just,
about.
The initial report, Your Honor, for the court's record was submitted to defense in 2018.
When we say report,
PowerPoint presentation.
okay, that's really what it is, because it's not something normally an expert report, if there is one, because sometimes the experts don't give a report, they just, in civil cases, routinely, they you offer them for depositions and you depose them and whatnot, and then you have their opinions at a deposition, or you offer a report, or sometimes both. But in any event, and many times both. But in any event, here, what normally happens is that they have no idea what the expert's going to say. There's maybe a summary of what they're going to say. That's why they do the voir dire examinations of the experts right before they testify.
Let me type this.
And here we're doing sort of like a quasi version of a Daubert challenge of some sort. In any event.
Your Honor, also for the record, our expert has produced a report which I emailed to Mr. Elizondo yesterday at the end of court proceedings. We just received it within the past week. I also have a copy of his curriculum vitae, and I also emailed that to Mr. Elizondo last night as well.
Which is probably,
Excuse me?
yes, the CV for your.
CD, I'm sorry.
Okay,
CD, I'm sorry.
I got it.
And they have not been into evidence yet.
We'll do it then.
But I have copies when they are, or if they are admitted into
So this is a
evidence or-
Daubert
or-
hearing, which I'm putting here for you. It permits the
Okay,
parties
let's call your witness.
to examine the challenged expert, okay, in open court to develop his or her
Stand call
testimony.
Special Agent Andrew Masters to the stand, Your Honor.
Oh.
Mr.
Special Agent
Master, come on
okay.
up. We'll swear
For
you in, sir,
purposes of
here.
evaluating his
And then we'll have
admissibility.
you
So, let's see.
go up to the witness stand.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please take a seat right up there.
They said Masterson, right? Okay. Witness
Pull up the chair, up to the mic, and we'll get started.
Masterson.
Mr. Schenk, make sure that you let me know if you cannot hear
Welcome,
Mr.
everyone. Like, share, please.
Master.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, could you please state your full name?
Andrew Masters, M-A-S-T-E-R-S.
And just so you know, Mr. Schenk, I'm actually muting you because you're
That's
not
from
allowed to
Zoom.
say anything, so I'm going to go ahead and mute you, okay?
All right.
Go ahead.
Are you currently employed?
I am.
Where are you employed?
I am employed as a special agent with the FBI.
Oh,
Okay.
Special Agent
Any
FBI.
particular division?
I am currently assigned to the Honolulu, Hawaii division.
Okay. And within, what are your duties? Well, let me back up.
Dream job, right?
How long have you been with the FBI?
I joined the FBI in 2011.
Okay. And what are your duties at the FBI?
Currently, I'm assigned to what's known as the Cellular Analysis Survey Team, or what you'll hear me refer to as CAST, where
That's
we
what Eduardo
analyze
doesn't
cell
like.
phone records to determine a general location for cellular devices.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that particular work?
I started my training in that unit in 2014.
Okay. Now, let's talk about training and your experience and educational background.
Sure.
Could you please tell the court your educational background?
Sure. I have a bachelor's in accounting.
Okay. And nothing else with regards to
No.
engineering or anything like that? Okay.
No.
And when it comes to training and experience that you have doing this kind of work, could you please tell the court what kind of training and experience you've received?
Sure. So the CAST unit, to get CAST certified takes about 1.5 to 2 years, depending on how often the courses are offered. It starts with a basic course, learning the very basics of cellular communication, and then it moves on to progressively more difficult and complex courses. It culminates in a certification process that takes a month of classes where you learn the ins and outs of cellular communication through all the different generations of technology, as well as the...
Let me
Yes.
stop you right there. You
Sure.
said you learned the networks and communications of all the different generations and technology. What do you mean by that?
You'll hear it commonly referred to as 3G, 4G, 5G. Those are all different technologies
Mevin,
and
here's the answer.
different
Here.
processes to affect cellular communication. With each generation, it gets more efficient, it gets more optimized, which is, and so, but they are different. So we had
Good
to have
morning, everyone.
training
Look
in
here.
each one of those
It's a Daubert
generations
hearing
to
for the
understand
next
what's
hour.
happening within the cellular network.
Okay.
So, in addition to learning the actual cellular communications side, we also are trained in the records themselves that are produced by the cell phone companies, and trained how to use those records to determine a general location of where a device was in the past or is currently.
Okay. And when you said you learned the records, what records are we referring to?
They're commonly referred to as CDRs, or
Okay.
call detail records.
Okay. And who trains you to understand, read, and interpret those CDRs?
So during the certification process, we are trained in the actual communications in the different technologies through the Florida Institute of Technology. The same professors that are teaching the future network engineers are the ones that are teaching us how cell phones operate. Then for the records side, we actually have the providers themselves, Sprint, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. They have their network engineers as well as their
I like this
records
guy.
experts come
Good
to our
morning, everyone.
certification process and teach us the nuances of each of their individual networks.
Okay. So you're actually having the service providers, Sprint, which is now T-Mobile,
Correct.
Verizon, AT&T, come and train you all as part of your certification.
That's correct. We are trained in the records by the people that create the records.
Okay. What else does your training entail?
So The second part of the certification process is focused in on what's called drive testing, using industry standard equipment to drive a certain area to map the actual the footprint
I can't wait
or
to
the
see
coverage
Eduardo
area
question this
of
guy.
a particular cell site.
Okay.
You're not going to get anywhere.
Anything else as part of your training?
Then the very last week of training is set aside for preparing you for expert testimony.
Okay. And then what happens once you're certified?
So after certification, you are allowed to work on cases and then testify to those cases.
Okay.
Throughout the entire training process, you're working cases. The way that the education process works for CAST is you take a class, for starting off with a basic class. You then go back to your office and you start working cases under the mentorship of a certified CAST agent. Once you've gained some experience in those records, then you go back to another class. Once that class is done, you repeat that process until you get all the way through the certification process.
Okay. And all in all, about how many hours of training
Can you hear
would
the
say you
trains
received?
going?
The certification process itself is over 300 hours. To date, I have over 500 hours of training.
Okay. And once you're certified, do you have to continue education? Like, do you have continuing education?
Yes, every year we have to go through a recertification process, which is about a week long. And during that recertification process, the network engineers and the records experts from each of the providers come out again, and every year they advise us what's happening within their network, any changes that are being made to their network, so that we can keep abreast of the latest information.
Okay.
Now what's
And when you say
going on?
network providers, who are you referring to?
Now I'm referring to AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. Before Sprint was acquired, Sprint would also come out.
Okay. Now, let's talk about a little bit about this methodology and what it is that you do. Could you please explain to the court what it is that you, as an FBI CAST agent, do?
Sure. In order to conduct what's called a historical cell site analysis, you need 3 pieces of information. Okay. You need the call detail records for our phone. You need a tower list showing where all the towers are that were used in that call detail record. And then you need the information about the offense date, time, location. So with those 3 pieces of information, I can determine what cell sites were used by a particular device. I can locate where on earth that cell site is and what direction that radio energy is pointed. And then I can determine, okay, was that cell site that was used at this particular date and time, was it in a proximity to the offense location?
Okay. And that methodology, is it accepted as relevant science by a community of scientists?
Yes, sir. It is accepted in courts across the land, and it has been written about in papers.
Who's written about it?
Specifically, CAST was specifically mentioned in a paper written by the IEEE, which my understanding is the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. And they specifically recommended CAST methodology for historical cell site analysis.
Rejected that unless the report is actually produced so that we can, I'm familiar with the report, I haven't seen it, and I don't know exactly what it says.
Oh man.
Well, I'm
Vince
not
is
sure
very
why
busy.
you think, unless you,
Well,
see,
you're saying,
the way this thing works, it should work, is that whenever you're going to, like somebody's going to come and testify,
The
normally
way this thing works.
at a deposition or whatnot, you'd ask a deposition to an expert to bring all data or literature that he used in order to arrive at an opinion. You had no such request. So there is no rule that says that an expert can't testify with hearsay documents as long as they use that to be able to arrive in some sort of way, directly or indirectly, at their opinion.
I don't dispute that experts can rely on hearsay or on research and sources of information.
So I'm not sure what your objection is
I'm
then.
objecting that he's making a representation that the IEEE took a position in a paper that is not before the court. We're just having to take the witnesses the work for it, that's what the position is of this organization.
I think it's exactly the same thing with regard to
It's not
anything
to
that he
judge.
may be using to be able to arrive at his opinion. Your expert can come and say that the IEEE did not, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
If I may
Oh,
respond
really?
briefly,
Go ahead.
just to that, Your Honor. I mean, looking at Kelly v. State, 824 Southwest 2nd, 568, some of the factors that a court should consider is the extent to which the underlying scientific theory and technique are accepted as valid by the relevant scientific community, if such community exists, and the existence of literature supporting or rejecting the underlying scientific theory and technique.
That's right.
So,
You tell the
I mean, I'm just trying to
prosecution.
get what's required.
I don't think that, or at least I didn't take that Mr. Soderman was saying that you can't
Correct, Your
testify
Honor.
to it. I think what he was saying is that he'd like to see the actual document. And all
Donkey
I'm
Loki.
saying is that there is no requirement that the actual
Donkey
document
Bell.
be brought unless, of course, there would have been a subpoena or a notice of deposition if it was done.
I mean,
Be able to get that done. I mean, this is why doing this type of thing without in this type of stage, in this type of manner,
Yeah. It's unprofessional. Tell them,
is,
sir.
at least for me, not commonly done unless the person is, for example, if there's a motion to strike the expert based on a Daubert hearing or whatnot, then you would ask that that particular expert bring
all my
with him
purple art to
all
support the family.
of the material used to be able to arrive at his opinions. And therefore, your expert could then take a look at that stuff and see if they can poke holes at that as well, right? To be able, if during his testimony. Well, that's not done here because, I mean, normally I think I don't want to say
This
that
judge is
in
like,
every
"What are you gonna
criminal
do?"
case, but in most criminal cases we've dealt with, always see an
Lenny-
expert
Lenny
usually is
says,
more
"I
dire in the
object
qualifications,
to Eduardo's
and we don't go
objections."
through this type of a Daubert quasi-style hearing.
Yes,
But in any event, we have, and we are, and we are going to have your expert testify with regard to that. So the judge, the court, will then have not only the opinions of the state's expert and testimony and opinions of the state's expert on direct and on cross, but also your expert to, in fact, try and knock that down and convince the court that, in fact, why it's not reliable, or why he's not qualified, or why it's not relevant.
Yeah.
I would just say that the distinction in my mind between the
In my
situation that
mind.
you described as what is the normal way to proceed in these circumstances versus what we maintain is our motion is about, we're not challenging his qualifications per se as an expert.
Per
He's
se.
got training, et cetera. So if this was a report that he relied on to offer his opinion or form his opinion, agree with Your Honor that he can rely on reports and information. that
What
are
does
out
it
before the
matter?
court. But
The
he's
cell phone
instead-
data.
What the issue is that we have raised with the court is whether the methodology is
If it's about
scientifically
locations.
sound, and whether the data and information that is generated
Okay.
by these cell phones and the way that they are used by law enforcement agencies to make claims about where the location of cell phones are, that is the contested issue. And he has testified that an organization supports his position without producing the evidence that in fact it does.
That's
And I
nice,
think that that's
Buttercup.
what needs to be adversarially tested here. It's complete hearsay for a witness to come in and say, this organization supports my position.
Oh my gosh.
All right, I've ruled on that already.
Judge is like, I've ruled on that already. Buttercup, I'm glad the
With
timestamps were
regards
helpful.
to, let's see. So you've mentioned that there is literature supporting CAST methodology, correct?
Correct.
Now let's talk about the methodology. Do you use that methodology?
Yes.
How do you use it? Well, let me stop right there. How often do you use this methodology?
Anytime I produce a cast analysis.
Now, by using these CAST analysis, Do you only use them to testify in court like you are here today?
No, sir, that's actually more the exception.
So this is the exception.
Yes.
What is it that you
For me.
normally? I'm sorry.
It's the exception for me. Other agents have testified quite a bit more. It just depends on the particular case, whether it proceeds to trial or not.
Okay. Now,
He's getting annoyed already.
being that this is the exception for you, what is it that you normally do with your cast analysis?
So when I get contacted by a law enforcement agency to assist in a case, I obtain the information from the cellular providers that are generally obtained by the law enforcement agency itself, and then I conduct my analysis. That's a draft analysis, and I provide that draft analysis to the law enforcement agency to be used for lead purposes or whatever necessary to guide them in their investigation as it regards to cellular analysis. But once we get towards trial, then I'll produce a final report. That final report is peer reviewed by another cast agent to verify that the information I'm putting in there is accurate, and that's the one that is produced in trial as we see here today.
Okay. Now, in using this as part of investigations,
Thanks for watching this with me.
has your cast or any cast analysis been used to track, locate, and apprehend fugitives?
Yes, many times.
Has it been used to help recover and rescue kidnapped individuals?
Yes, many times.
And has it ever been used to locate, track down, and find dead bodies?
Victims of other crimes or missing hikers, yes,
questions.
we've done that on numerous occasions.
So you've used your cast analysis to actually locate cell phones and track down and find people.
Yes, I have.
And how often have you done that?
Thank you, Rochelle.
I'm in the records, if not every day, certainly every other day for the last several years. So it just depends on the case, whether it's a historical case or an exigent case, such as a kidnapping or something like that. But I am constantly in the records and using the records to locate devices.
And just very briefly, when it comes to locating those individuals that we've mentioned earlier, is it your work directly that aids law enforcement?
At times, it's my work directly that leads to the location of the sought out individual. Other times, it's used in conjunction with other law enforcement methods.
Okay. But ultimately, in using this methodology, you do track phones,
Yes, absolutely.
and you actually find them
Absolutely.
on if a daily basis, if not a weekly basis.
I wouldn't say daily I find phones because one case takes several days,
Okay.
but certainly very often. It's very, very often that I'm finding phones.
Okay. Now, when it comes to this methodology that was utilized by you, are there other individuals or other experts who could use this methodology and track phones?
Anybody can use the methodology. If you have the requisite knowledge to understand what the records are telling you, the methodology is quite simple.
So you don't need to. It's not like the FBI are the only individuals able to do this.
No, in fact, we train law enforcement agencies throughout the country and throughout the world on how to do this technique.
And private individuals could do this as well if they have the requisite knowledge?
Private individuals can go through private companies. There are private companies out there that provide training. Some are better than others. But yes, if you want to learn how to do it, you can learn how to do it.
Okay. And in utilizing this methodology, what is the potential rate of error in conducting a historical cell site analysis?
There's really not a rate of error when it comes to this methodology. And the reason is because the records tell us exactly which cell sites are used to facilitate communications. And the records from the providers also tell us exactly where those cell sites are on the planet Earth. So all I'm doing is putting that on a map to visually represent what is already in the records provided by the network providers.
Okay. And that data is reliable?
It is.
How do you know?
Because I've found phones many, many times.
So because you've found phones using this data,
Right. So there's several ways that we have validated this data. The number one way is we are finding phones and we are finding the people behind those phones,
so solid.
whether victims, fugitives, or what have you. Second, you can validate it by surveillance video. That if we locate where we believe a phone is, if we go out and pull video from the surrounding businesses or residences, and we see that device or that person that has that device is on that video, that validates what we're doing. And then second, we've also had situations where we've stated where we believe a cell phone was, and the person that the defendant later confessed to being at that location. So there's many ways we validate it, but it is validated daily.
Okay. And in this case, in the methodology that you used for this particular case and in the report you generated for this case,
Yes.
was the cell detail records, the CDRs, was that the only thing you utilized in generating your report?
No.
What else did you utilize?
So there's a call detail records, which is the listing of who called who, what cell towers were used. There's the timing advance report, which is also provided by the network provider, but is actually an independent system within that provider. Then you have the surveillance video that was captured from various businesses throughout Laredo. And then you have Google location data. And finally, there's latitudes and longitudes, GPS coordinates that were provided by Motorola. So there are 5 independent systems all saying the same thing.
All saying the same thing.
All saying the same thing.
So it wasn't just your methodology that you used in this case?
No, sir.
It
No,
was-
it was not just the cell site analysis.
Correct. You used various other sources of,
Correct.
of data and information
That's
in order
correct.
to locate the phones at question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And with regards to Google, what is it from Google that you were utilizing?
It's Google location data.
Okay, Google location data. And specifically, what kind of data are we talking about there?
So Google collects location information in 3 different ways. It collects on cellular, it collects on Wi-Fi, and collects on GPS. There are different methods for collecting on each one of those, but they all accomplish the same thing with varying degrees of specificity. When it collects on cellular, it's usually a large error radius because a cellular is the least accurate way of the 3.
Okay.
Followed by Wi-Fi. It collects on Wi-Fi. What happens is as you are walking down the street, your phone is sensing all the Wi-Fi signals coming from the houses and businesses of the street you're walking on. Your phone reports that information to Wi-Fi along with the latitude and longitude that your device detects on its GPS sensors. So that way, when somebody else is walking down that same street next week and their phone detects the same Wi-Fi at the same signal strength, Google knows where you are. And then finally, there's GPS, which is the global positioning system. That's actually the GPS antennas on your phone collecting signals from satellites in orbit and narrowing down exactly where your device is. That's the most accurate of the 3.
Now, of those 3, you said that the cell data was the least reliable?
Correct. It has the largest error radius.
Largest error radius?
Yes.
Did you utilize that in your report?
I did not.
So you screened that out?
I pulled out any of the cellular data because the error radiuses were so large it really didn't offer that much information.
Okay. Now, there's been some questions about per call measurement data. Could you please explain to the court what per call measurement data is?
Sure. Per call measurement data is Sprint's terminology for a engineering tool called timing advance. Okay. So timing advance is a way. Let me back up. So cell phone and cellular communications is pretty much all about synchronization of signals. Okay. And I say that because if my phone is trying to connect with a cellular antenna or a cell site antenna at the exact same millisecond as your phone, it's going to cause interference on both of our calls. And both of us are going to be unhappy and complain to the network. The networks don't want that. So they have various tools that they use to synchronize those signals. One of those tools is called timing advance. And what timing advance is the network will send out a signal from the tower to your phone, and then the signal will return from your phone to the tower. Because radio waves travel at a known speed, which is the speed of light, they can calculate, and they know the time it takes for the signal to go to your phone and back to the tower. You can calculate the distance that phone is away from the tower. Okay, so we have the distance, or we have the we have the speed, and we have the time. You can calculate the distance. And with that information, the networks use that to say, okay, Andy, why don't you delay your signal by 2 milliseconds, and that way my signal does not interfere with anybody else's. Okay? We use this in law enforcement because now instead of a large area or a large sector, we can start narrowing down to within that sector where that device is. So you'll see that in my maps in the analysis I did. You'll see it as an arc. That phone is likely somewhere in that arc, or sometimes just inside that arc.
Okay. And is that methodology, those PCMDs, are they good data?
They're very good data.
How do you know that?
Because we use it quite often. That is our go-to, and what we hope to get from the providers, because that is the best data that we have to locate cell phones.
And using that data, you've located cell phones?
Many times.
Okay.
Many times. I like that. Shame. Defense, what are you going to say?
All right. Permission to approach, Your Honor.
So, welcome. This is a Daubert hearing.
Now, this is a non-jury
Yes.
exhibit.
A Daubert hearing permits the parties to examine the challenged expert in
Do you
open
call
court
it? Do you want to call it by the name of the expert?
to develop
Or,
his or her
Cindy, what would you rather
testimony
do?
for purposes of evaluating its
Whatever you thought.
admissibility. That's what's happening now. The trial only starts at 10:30
Excuse me?
Texas time, which is in about 50 minutes.
Well, I mean,
40 minutes. 40 minutes.
This is just for qualifying, so I don't know what this is.
This is the
An article?
report I had mentioned earlier that Masters testified to with regards to the IEEE taking a stance on,
Right, so,
just for identification purposes, to clean up the record.
no, it should be in there, but I think it's not going to go to the jury.
Correct, no.
So right now, it's a non-jury exhibit. I don't know, would you want to call it non-jury?
So then let's do,
Masters?
do,
Or,
non-jury one?
all right?
Okay.
So okay.
You're the one that's that might be putting this together, so I'll just leave it up to
another
you.
sticker.
You can just put it right on top of
Right
it.
here, no, we should.
Ah, okay, I see.
Silas says they will take a nice long break first, Chief.
I wonder where this is
I have
from.
no doubt.
All right, I'm now tendering to you what's been marked as state's non-jury exhibit number 1.
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
What is that?
This is the article I was referring to from the IEEE.
The one that took the position that CAS methodology should be utilized?
Correct.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet.
Now tendering to defense state's non-jury exhibit 1.
Or maybe you should have told us that you actually had the article. when
Oh,
Mr.
we just got
Solomon-
it right now. Apologies.
I see.
Your Honor, I'm just seeing this now. There's not, I've requested a copy of this. You know, it's-
Yeah, no, we have.
This
Here we go.
trial. I'm just watching here with you
All
guys.
right.
What
This
the
is for the
hell?
purpose
This is
of
the
the
Daubert
For
hearing.
the purpose of the hearing, non-jury, I'm sorry, not
No
jury
juries
one,
in the
thank
court
you,
yet.
admitted.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it here.
Not jury one.
So just so it's clear, Mr. Gonzalez, you did not have it when we were speaking, when Mr. Shuttleman was concerned about that, you got it afterwards.
Correct, Your Honor. When that was going on, I had made a request for it to be printed.
Thank you.
The judge has
Permission to
already
reapproach the witness, Your Honor?
Sure, go ahead.
Just so.
Now, at some point, but, Mr. Schoeneman, so you're not, just so I know what to expect from this particular witness for purpose of making a decision,
Yes.
you are not objecting to his opinions, just to the methodology of arriving at his opinion? Or are you doing both?
No, we're doing both, Your Honor.
So then I'd like to know what his opinions are going to be at some point. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. What is
If
this
you
old
could
age home
please,
tea time drama at the
indicate
defense
the page
table?
number of this report and where at all it mentions CAS?
Sure. So there's no actual page numbers on here, but it is on the 15th page. It's
Okay.
the second to last page. It might be easier to locate it that way. On the left-hand column, would you like me to read from it, sir, or no?
Yes, please.
Okay. There, it starts, there's some bullet points, but just above the bullet points, it says, to increase the accuracy of CDR-based geolocation estimates, and as a result of the quality of evidence available to criminal courts, the following best practices are suggested. There's several data points, or several bullet points there. Towards the bottom of the page, though, is this one. It says, use the methodology currently employed by the FBI's CAS team, showing sector antenna locations and orientations on maps instead of coverage estimates.
We like that whole sentence.
And this was published by who again?
This is the IEEE.
All right. If I may have a moment, Your Honor. Alrighty. Now, and we'll get into your report in a second,
Sure.
but let's talk about some of the opinions you made in this case.
Okay.
Did you utilize the CAS methodology in order to track phones in this case?
I did.
Okay. Whose phones were you tracking in this particular case?
There were two phones. One belonged to the defendant, and one belonged to the victim.
Okay. And like I said, again, you utilized this methodology. Could you please explain to the court exactly what it is that you did?
Sure. So for the cellular analysis part, like I said before, you need three things to conduct a cellular analysis. You need the call detail records showing which cell sites were used. You need the tower list showing where those cell sites are on the planet Earth. And you need the location information about where the crime scene or other pertinent locations are. So once I know what cell sites a phone used, just for example, cell site 123, I can use that information, go look at the tower list, find out where cell site 123 is, find out which sector was used, and which direction that signal is pointed.
We can learn from
Once
the Coburger
you do
case
that,
too.
you can put that information on a map, and then compare that information where that cell site is in comparison to where the pertinent locations of the case are. In this particular case, the crime scenes.
And were you, in your opinion and in your report, did you say this is exactly where this phone is?
No.
Why is that?
Because cellular analysis is not, you can't get to that level of precision that it's at this room of this house. Depending on what information you have available to you, if you have just the CDRs, I'm constrained to say that that phone was somewhere within the footprint or the coverage area of a particular cell site. Okay. If we have timing advance, now I can go into greater specificity, saying that phone is within the arc or very close to that arc that's shown in the records. If I have Google, I can get to more specific. Whether it's Wi-Fi or GPS, I can use that information to dial down even further. But it really just depends on what data sets I have available to me to how specific I can get.
Okay. Now, when referring to the CDRs that you utilized in this case, who were they from again? I'm sorry.
The CDRs were for the defendant's phone, it was from Sprint,
Okay.
and for the victim's phone, it was AT&T.
Okay. So Sprint and AT&T records is what you utilized.
That is correct.
Okay. And Is that all you utilize in mapping out and, making how would I say it, making a statement as to, or giving an opinion as to this is the approximate location the defendant's cell phone or the victim's cell phone is?
It's the CDRs and the time and the PCMD report from Sprint. If you're talking on the cellular side, yes, those are that's the information I use.
Okay, but now I'm moving away from that.
Okay.
So you utilized those, correct?
Correct.
And you plotted based off of the data you received
Yes.
from Sprint and AT&T?
Correct.
But was there anything else that you used to corroborate or identify that, you know what, this is a fair representation, this is pretty accurate?
Yes, the Google records as well as the Motorola records.
Okay. Anything else that you utilized? Maybe surveillance cameras or?
There were surveillance cameras there. That information was provided by Laredo PD, so I don't have any independent knowledge other than what was provided by that. Yeah.
Okay. And in utilizing the Motorola records, are we referring to the GPS Motorola records that were taken from the radio, the Kilo unit?
Yes.
Okay. And did those data, and the court's familiar with this exhibit, I believe it states Exhibit 2 is the radio. With regards to that, did it corroborate what you were finding with the CDRs?
There was not a lot of information, but what was in there did corroborate, yes.
Okay.
This is so
And based off of the surveillance photos that were
Hope you don't
given to
think
you
it's
by
boring. We're watching
LPD,
it
those
together.
corroborate what your data plot points were for the CDRs?
The data, the information of where the videos were is consistent with what I'm seeing in the phone records.
Okay. And finally, with regards to the Google data,
Mhm.
and you said that you were using the GPS from Wi-Fi and GPS, but
Mhm.
you eliminated the cell phone
Correct.
because you didn't believe it to be reliable.
It's actually not that it's reliable, it's just the error radius was so large it really didn't offer any level of specificity.
Okay. So with regards to those data points from Google, did that corroborate what you were finding with the CDRs?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you, Donna Woodley Bennett.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
The opinions?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, I
Oh,
want to know the opinion.
you want to, I mean, I have his report right here if you want to get into
No, I
that.
just want to hear what his opinion was
Oh,
with regard
okay.
to, I mean, I'm assuming he's opining with regard to where the phones were at a particular moment. Is that what he's opining on?
At
Or-
particular moments throughout the day, I mean, we can get into it, Your Honor.
Well,
Oh, we're
I'm
going
kind
to
of, that's why I asked Ms. Schoenemann,
But they
is
only
he,
have 29 minutes
I don't
left.
want to get into all of that if in fact all that the defense is arguing is that,
You tell them, Judge.
it's junk science or something, or the methodology is just not accepted, or it's not something that should be relied on or whatnot. If that's all they're doing, then we'll just go after the methodology and forget about the opinions, because if the methodology is bad and the opinions relied on that, then
Yeah.
we don't have to worry about that, the opinions itself. However, earlier I asked that question, and Mr. Schoenemann said it's both.
Your Honor, if I may, I believe at that point, we're exceeding the scope of the Kelly Daubert 702 hearing. I mean, the purposes of having this hearing and what they state out in their motion is simply that the methodology is bad, therefore the data shouldn't be entered, and that Your Honor should be the gatekeeper as to his ultimate opinion. Now, if we're going to get into the ultimate opinion, I mean, that's something for the battle of experts to handle. Right now,
Well-
we're just testing the qualifications of...
Well, the problem is that right now, I don't know what his opinion is. So if his opinion, and I'm not talking about this particular case, but if an opinion of an expert is such that he may be talking about all these methodologies and all these things that are being said and how the data was used and how you arrive at particular points, and then he gives opinions that had nothing to do with those things, then how is it that I allowed him to testify? You know what I'm saying? So the opinion has to match, has to match the methodology. So I'm saying, I'm not asking you, or I guess I'm not, Mr. Schoenemann, on your end,
What's going to happen here?
are his, and again, when you said the report, you keep on calling it the report. It's not a report. It's a PowerPoint presentation.
Correct, Your Honor, but it does, within that PowerPoint presentation, has data that he used from AT&T and Sprint,
Okay.
as well as from Google, as well as
Right,
from
but his
Motorola.
opinions, what are his?
Yeah, his opinions are in here.
I don't want you to give me the, I want you to just summarize what his opinion is. What is his opinion with regard to that?
Okay.
So can you tell me, before you start asking him questions, what is it that he opines?
That his findings are that the defendant's phone was located at or near the crime scene,
Yeah.
at or near the time that the state alleges the crime occurred, and that the victim's phone is traveling near and traveling across town
Okay.
to the defendant's home, or at least in hitting a tower
Oh.
that covers the defendant's home after the time the state is alleging that the incident occurred. Meaning that the defendant took the phones after he murdered.
He took the phones home?
Griselda
So in other words, that
Hernandez.
when he went to his house, at whatever hours you have him going to his
Correct.
house,
And we
that
have-
the phones were already with him,
That's
is
right.
the theory behind those opinions,
That is correct, Your Honor.
as a result of as a result of the methodology behind the expert's opinion. And so, if he can say that in a nutshell, that's his opinion, I don't want him to give me all the points,
Okay.
but if he can say that in a nutshell, at least that's going to be his opinion, and now you can pass the witness, and now Mr. Schoeneman knows exactly what his opinion is going to be, not that he already doesn't, but just at least it's on the record that he is, and then he can go ahead and try and cross-examine him on those
Try and
issues.
cross-examine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
give
you,
it
Your Honor.
give it a go. As Mike from that chapter would say, give it a go. Let's see, defense, what you got? I mean, that is some damning evidence that he took the victim's phones, because Grizelda had two phones, one for her, one for the baby, right?
You testified
Baby.
earlier you utilized Sprint and AT&T, Google, and Motorola data, correct?
That's correct.
And you generated a report, PDF, PowerPoint presentation, mapping out that data, correct?
Correct. I prepared an analysis.
And ultimately, what is your opinion and conclusion after using all that data?
That at or about the time the homicides are alleged to have occurred, that the defendant's phone was in the vicinity of that area. Subsequent to that time frame, both the defendant's phones and the victim's phone traveled to a different area of Laredo and then back to the crime scene area.
Okay, and when, just one more point. The victim's phone,
Yes.
where do you have an opinion as to where that phone was approximately at or about the time the homicides are alleged to have occurred?
In the vicinity of the homicide location.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you turn on your microphone?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just get close to you.
Yes, we know this, but
Thank
Grizelda's
you,
phone
Sean.
was analyzing this data, and it
How's
shows
that?
that he
You don't have
took
to
the
lean
phone
forward.
to his
Just
house.
whatever it catches.
That is
All right,
some
thank you.
damning evidence.
Agent Masters, really quickly on your qualifications, just to touch on that so the record is very clear.
Sure.
Your bachelor's degree was in business administration, specifically in accounting, correct?
That's correct.
You don't have any degree of any kind in any field of engineering, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Wow.
And you've never worked, yeah, my understanding is that you are a career law enforcement officer pretty much from graduation in college.
Pretty
the
close
present
to,
day.
but yes.
So you've worked basically in law enforcement. You're not a scientist, you don't have a background in science, other than
So, like, basically,
the hours
you
of
know
training
nothing.
you spoke about through your work as a cast agent. Is that correct?
That's also correct, yes.
Okay. And you began that education, as I understand it, you had nothing to do with this field at all. You were a special investigator with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office from 2006 to 2011. You became an FBI agent in 2011, so you had nothing to do with any of this until you joined the FBI. Is that correct?
That's also correct.
Okay. I want to touch on the report that you've commented on, and I have not. I'll just say for the record, I haven't had a chance to read it carefully. I do intend to do that, but
Interesting.
I just want to make the record clear that you're not claiming that this report is a position of the IEEE. It's of the organization's position about the validity of this technology, are you?
That report was generated, or that article was prepared for the IEEE, and the position is that on that page I mentioned, that the CAST methodology is the correct one to use.
You tell me.
published in a IEEE journal, but it's not a position of the organization. It's a position of the authors of the journal. I'm sorry, of the article, correct?
I don't know the level of the author's relationship with the organization
Okay.
itself.
So you're not familiar with the two co-authors of this article and their credentials as experts in this field?
I'm not.
Okay. So one of the two was a person named Vladan Jovanovic, and he appears to have a background in engineering, but the second co-author is someone named Brian Cummings. His background is in, I believe, business administration, and he's worked as an investigator in a public defender office. So he doesn't appear to have any engineering background whatsoever. Those are the two co-authors of this article.
I have no idea what their background is, other than I do know of Mr. Jovanovic as an engineer, but beyond that, I have no knowledge.
Okay.
Mr. Shulman,
Yeah.
are you testifying with regard to, are you putting in, where is this information that you just got? That you just
I
did?
can introduce I think it's already been introduced. for
No, the
purposes of
bachelor's
hearing.
degree in business
Oh,
administration. and
The two authors have biographical
all.
works
Okay,
on the last
so
page.
it's in the report itself,
Yes, it is.
or in the article itself?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Now, I would like an opportunity to review this report carefully, but I just want to make the point that this is basically the opinion of two authors, only one of whom was an engineer.
Right, but even if it
They're gonna be
is,
so late
the fact
today.
that IEEE printed that in their journal is, I'd say, is significant.
The article, and this is all just from what I can gather from the abstract, here's what it says, the last sentence from the abstract. This paper discusses CDR-based geolocation methods that are well-founded in the science of RF engineering, as well as methods that have no basis in RF theory nor any engineering practices. That's from the abstract.
Okay.
So it's not an unqualified endorsement of these sorts of methodologies. It's taking a critical look at the methodologies and endorsing some and rejecting others. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
He's like,
So
yes.
I asked my colleagues to maybe queue up. I have a couple slides that I just they're from your report.
Okay.
And I think they might help the court to sort of visualize
Defense computer.
to visualize some of the technologies that you're speaking about.
Sure.
Okay.
Queue up
And
the
just
slides.
for the record, then, as to your report, as I read it, and of course it was PowerPoint slides, so I'm doing drawing a lot of inferences here because there's not a lot of text. It's mostly visual images, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
As I understand your report,
What now?
okay, thanks. I don't need it quite yet. Thank you. As I understand it, I would say you mentioned 5 different sources of telecommunications data that are referred to in your report. I want to talk about 3 of them for the purposes of this hearing, and that is the call data records, CDR.
Okay.
You referred to, it's called, I've got it in my PowerPoint slide, but there it is.
Actually, it's his
Per call
PowerPoint
measurement
slide.
data records. As I understand it, that's called timing
Advanced.
timing advance?
Yes.
So, and then the third is the Google location data. And they're
Okay.
all discussed in your direct examination.
Yes.
So let's start with call data. Let's start with call detail records. But actually, before I do that, I just want to get some basic principles, or question you a little bit about basic principles of how cell phones function, how they interact with cell phone towers.
Sure.
Okay. So I may think that one of the assumptions that underlies this entire area is that when a cell phone connects with a cell phone tower, it's going to connect with the closest or nearest cell phone tower. Is that correct?
That's generally the case, but not always.
Okay, so one can't necessarily conclude from the location of the cell phone tower that it's even connected to a cell phone that's closest to that tower. Is that right?
Right. What you can conclude is that the cell site that's in the call detail records is the cell site that the phone saw as the best signal available to it.
Okay, so it's more important determinant of where the cell phone is located about the strength of the signal of the cell phone tower as opposed to the proximity of the cell phone tower to the cell phone. Is that correct?
The determining factor is the strength and quality. It's a measurement of both strength and quality, but yes.
But the important point here is that the strongest signal will not always come from the closest cell phone for a number of reasons, correct?
There are reasons that it would not, yes.
Okay, and among those, I just want to go through some of these. You tell me if these are in fact reasons that affect the strength of the signal, and if I got any of them wrong, please let me know. One of them is topography.
Yes, definitely.
Weather conditions.
No.
No? Okay. Height of the cell phone tower.
Yes.
The wattage or power of the cell phone tower.
Yes.
The number, height, location, and direction of the tower's antennas.
I'm sorry, say that again, sir?
Sorry. The number, height, location, and direction of the cell phone tower's antennas.
Are you talking about the surrounding towers or the serving cell?
I think the serving tower.
Or
both. I think
real trial starting
I think
soon.
it's both a function of this. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm going to object to the height portion of that. That's been asked and answered. The height does affect it. He's already testified to that.
Did you say height or height?
I said height. And I
Didn't
don't
you already
believe-
ask height?
Oh, he did? Okay, I'm sorry.
You had height already.
You're right.
You can
He
make-
has testified to that.
The jury is not in the room right now.
Next.
But
They are going
okay.
to be arriving
What about
now.
physical obstructions?
And the judge said he
Certainly.
wants to start at half past.
And then network traffic, that is
I
the
don't know about
demand
that.
on a particular cell phone tower will affect the strength of the signal as well?
No, sir, not at all.
Not at all?
Not at
Okay.
all.
What about features of the cell phone itself, like the wattage of the cell phone,
No.
the bandwidth of the phone?
That would not affect which tower it's going to use, no.
Okay. Now, because cell phones are within multiple towers at any given time, at least in a major urban area like Laredo or modest-sized city like this, they're constantly scanning the network for the tower with the strongest available signal, right?
Strongest and best quality, yes.
That means that when they connect with a particular cell phone tower, they don't stay with that tower. They can be passed to another cell phone tower that might be further away. Is that correct?
Yes, but if I can explain a little bit.
Sure.
So your phone is constantly, like you said, is constantly measuring the cellular environment. It's taking the measurements that it's receiving from all the signals from the towers, and it's ranking them. The one on top is this, what's known as the serving cell. That's the cell site that your phone is going to camp on in case it wants to use network resources like making a phone call or sending a text message or checking Facebook. Once you push send to make a phone call, your phone is going to reach out to that serving cell that it's camped on to request network resources. Once that happens, once that initial handshake is made, then the network takes over, and yes, it can redirect to a separate cell site. But the network, the cell site that you see in the CDR is the initial cell site, which is the one the phone chose.
Okay, but that, and I appreciate that explanation, but the initial cell site that is reflected in the records is not necessarily a cell phone tower that is most proximate to the cell phone itself, correct?
Usually it is, but no, it is not always.
Right. Okay. I want to talk about, because you testified on direct and the state has indicated that it intends to use this technology to try to prove that the cell phone was mobile as opposed to stationary, okay?
Okay.
And I know that this is in your report, but I just want to focus on that aspect about even when a cell phone is in motion, okay? We're assuming it's mobile, either from walking or driving. The cell network knows which cell tower will have the best possible connection because of the constant scanning that you described in your testimony, correct?
That's correct. Your phone, once you're in a call or using network resources, your phone is working in conjunction with the network. It's telling the network what it sees all the surrounding towers at, and then the network will make a decision. If you're driving down 35, okay, you need to go to this next tower now.
Right. If a cell phone is in motion while a call is occurring, the cellular network is designed to seamlessly transfer the call from tower to tower in order to maintain the strongest signal possible. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that process of transferring a call from one tower to another is, I believe, called a handoff. Is that correct?
A handoff or a handover.
Okay.
Yes.
And even a stationary phone, that is one that's just in a location, that's completely stationary for a period of time, can experience a handoff if located in an area covered by several cell phone towers where the signal strength is varying, correct?
It can, yes.
Okay, so that means that from the cell phone, if I understand this correctly, from the locations of the cell phone towers themselves, one cannot draw conclusive conclusions about whether the cell phone is stationary versus mobile. Is that correct?
In some situations, you're correct. Others, you're not. In order to affect that handoff, you still have to be in the coverage area of that tower, right? So if you're talking about two towers that are adjacent to each other and you're sitting in between those two towers, both of those towers are going to have ample coverage of that area. So yes, it could be possible that you are standing in one place and the network directs you to another cell site. What's not going to happen is you use a cell site on the south side of town, and then the network's going to tell you to use a cell site in the north side of town. So if that happens, you see cellular activity on the south side or a cell site on the south side of town, and then you later see, an hour later, see activity on the north side of town. That absolutely indicates there's movement there.
While we're on that point, what is your understanding of the range or of a cell phone tower's coverage area?
That's all dependent on how the network is designed and what the network engineers are trying to accomplish with those towers.
So it can vary, but can you give us an idea of what's on the low end of the range and what's on the high end?
Sure. So if we're talking about downtown LA or downtown Manhattan,
We're talking about Laredo.
I know, but I'm providing you an example. You asked me to
I'm
give for the
sorry.
low and high.
I'm sorry.
So if we're talking about a dense urban area such as that, it's going to be a tenth of a mile, right? Because there's so many buildings in the way, so many obstructions, they have to really pack in the cell sites. Okay, if you're talking about the ranch land between Laredo and San Antonio, it can be 5 miles.
But I'm talking about the city of Laredo, which
Okay.
is much less dense
Yes.
than Los Angeles and not as sparsely populated as the latter example.
Exactly.
Hundreds
Yes.
of miles
So
then
can you
what?
give us an idea of like cell phone towers within this city of Laredo? What is on the low end of the range of coverage area versus what's on the high end?
So there are different towers in Laredo that offer different levels of coverage. From what I've seen in this particular case, I'd say the low end is about 1.5 to 2 miles. High end is probably, as noted in my report, is going to be upwards of like 3-4 miles, somewhere around there.
You found no cell phone tower that, by the way, how did you determine the cell phone range with respect to, did you determine the cell phone range, or the cell tower range, excuse me, for all of the towers that are documented or reflected in your report?
It's the Daubert Hearing.
Not all of them. I did not put the drive test information for all of the towers, only the ones that I deemed or I felt were pertinent to this case.
So there were some cell phone towers that are reported, or the data is reported and reflected in your report, for which you have no idea what the cell phone tower
smart.
range
We'd
is.
bet.
Is that correct?
Well, it's not in there. We have the data, but you're right. I did not put every single drive test result in there. No.
All right. And are you saying that there is no cell phone tower in the city of Laredo that has a range of coverage that's greater than 3.5 miles?
No, sir. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying from what I've seen in this case is that I can recollect right now is 3.5 to 4 miles or something of that approximation.
I understand, but you I think testified that you did not determine what the cell phone range was for every cell phone tower that is reported in your report.
Correct.
Okay, so one of those, so you may have left out, failed to report the cell or determine the cell phone range for some of the cell phone towers for which you are collecting data or reporting data in your report. Is that not correct?
That is correct, but you can also, there's other ways to determine, not the same degree of specificity as with some of the towers, but the ones that I did not include the drive test data, you can still get a general idea of how the range of those towers by determining where is the next tower along that same general azimuth.
Wrap it up, guys. Wrap
The
it up.
network engineers are to design the network so that one tower is going to go just a little bit over, a portion over halfway to the next tower. And they want that overlap so that you have those easy handoffs. It's not going to be designed to shoot over the next tower, covering an area much further away.
I want to talk about each of these three sources of data, and it's not, as quickly as we can.
Sure.
I know we're keeping the jurors waiting, but
Oh, yeah,
so
they're
I want
waiting.
to talk about call detail record. Okay, first.
Okay.
My understanding of that is that it's a record that's produced by the cell phone company. It contains certain data. It does not contain the location of the cell phone itself, does it?
No.
Okay. So what it does include, though, is date, time, call duration, parties involved in the call, as well as the cell phone tower with which the phone connected to the network. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we don't have from that record any information from which we can make a direct conclusion about where the cell phone itself is located, but we can conclude about where the cell phone tower is located.
What you can conclude is that the cell phone is within the coverage area of the cell tower that was used. Correct.
And how large an area is the cell phone coverage area of the cell phone towers that you've seen in Laredo? How large is that area?
I thought you already asked that question.
No, I asked. I'm now talking about the area as
Insert eye
opposed
rolls.
to the, I suppose, the range is what I thought
Why
asking
would the
about
phones
before.
in
Was
each
how far can it reach?
Is there
how
a
many
difference between
miles?
range and area?
And I don't know that I would use those interchangeably. I don't know.
I
would-
think
Judge is
that
like-
I'm sorry, I'm certainly not an expert in this field, but what I was trying to ask about earlier was how far the signal could go at its most distant point, and now I think you're talking about the coverage area. And I wanted to know what is the...
Why don't you ask him if he thinks there's a distinction so that I can take that off my mind?
All right. Is there a distinction between the range of a cell phone tower, like to reach the most distant point is what I was using the term to mean, versus the area of coverage, like the square miles that would be covered by a particular cell phone tower?
Okay, so it's kind of a interesting question you're asking. So in theory, the range of a radio wave is infinite. It just gets infinitely small as it travels through space and time, okay? The coverage area is the area in which that signal is strong enough and has a clear and is of significant quality that it can handle voice communications or communications
It feels like we're
of
looking
data
into
or
like a university
texting.
class, right?
So that area is much, much smaller than the range, I would say, of the of RF energy, which, like, again, goes on ad infinitum.
So snarky.
Well, I'm certainly not asking about the infinitum range. I'm talking about the coverage area of a particular cell phone, that is, the geographic area within which a particular sector of a cell phone tower, that a cell phone within that geographic area can communicate with a particular cell phone tower. Can you calculate that in terms of square miles?
Didn't you ask that question earlier, and he said that it depends on how each particular tower is engineered to, didn't we do that?
The question I asked was how far the cell phone towers could be, like whether it was 1.5 miles, I believe he testified, or up to 3.5 miles, or perhaps a greater distance. But now I'm talking about the geographic area of coverage of a particular cell phone tower and the sectors of the tower. That's what I'm asking you to.
The way I understood that question to be earlier was,
Really?
it could be 3.5 to 4 miles. And were you talking about the distance between the towers at that point?
No, I was talking about the distance between the cell phone tower
I
and
really
a cell phone.
wish someone could just say,
that is
Would that
why
be
were the
coverage
phones in
then?
each truck?
That's on a straight line, basically, from
I know that's
cell
the
phone
feature
tower
it
to
is.
cell phone. And I understood the witness to say
So
that
if we have a tower, I'm sorry, but I need to understand your questioning. This is the tower, and this is the phone on this side,
yeah.
and there's a phone on this side and a phone on this side. And so if you do this, right, would that, I'm sorry, it's a pink pen.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. So if you do that, the tower is there. It's possible that it could be 3.5 miles like this,
My understanding
Is that what you were saying earlier in the questioning?
My earlier question was the point from your center point on the piece of paper is the cell phone tower, and that outer circle is the outermost
This is so hectic.
limit of the cell phone's range, and that was what I was asking about before. It would be, I think, the
So the-
radius or the radii.
So that the distinction, I'm sorry, I was talking to you, and you're now talking to the witness. So I wanted to clarify for my purposes what your questioning is, because I'm the one that's ultimately going to make a decision on that.
That's right, that's
So what your question is so that I can understand what you're asking the witness, and I understand the response, the distinction between your earlier question and this one is what?
Yeah, is what?
I'm sorry,
I love
I
that.
did such a poor job explaining it, Your Honor. My earlier question was designed to determine the greatest distance that a cell phone could be from a particular cell phone tower and still connect to that cell phone tower. So
Okay.
could it be a mile and a half, 3
So
miles, 5 miles?
we already, he testified here in Laredo.
He's
He
already
didn't.
testified about
Okay,
that.
hold on a second. Don't interrupt me. He already testified it was going to be the farthest he found it was around 3.5 miles here in Laredo. He said it depended on,
Yes.
he said Manhattan or L.A. or where, and you said no, here in Laredo. That part of it. So now the question here is.
The geographic coverage area. So in other words, I think I could show it with images from the witness's report.
Show, because I don't think
Somebody,
you.
can we hear this? Yeah, that's pretty helpful. So, I mean, one of my colleagues
Go ahead.
articulated this for me.
So now you know what my questions are in my mind, so you can.
I actually was a math minor, but it was a lifetime ago, and so I should be able to do this. But with the assistance of my colleagues, they say the difference here is between the radius, basically, which is what I was asking about before.
His colleagues failed to
distance from the
get the
center
presentation
of that
ready.
circle to its outermost circumference. And what we're now asking is that, as I understand it, we can go into this in a little more depth, but at that center point, basically a cell phone tower has 3 sectors.
Correct.
They're each at 120-degree segments.
Correct.
And that there is then a coverage area within each of those sectors that can be calculated in terms of square mileage, and that's what I'm asking.
Okay, so now that I've heard you explain it more, the way you're using the terms coverage and range seem
Yes.
to be asking the same question.
Okay.
That the range is the coverage area. That in order to connect with a cell tower or a cell site, you have to be within the coverage area of that cell site. Okay, that coverage area would be the range. That the same thing as the range of that tower for the purposes of connecting for cellular communications. I'm not sure if that clarifies or makes it more muddy.
I think that we'll just move on,
Okay.
because I do believe I was asking a different question. Can we kind of go through the PowerPoint?
Let's move on, Mr. Shunley.
Sure.
Oh, shame. This is going so badly. He's trying so hard to show that PowerPoint.
This is what I kind of wanted. We'll see.
Sure.
Let's stay here. Let's stay on this is the timing advance.
Sure.
Okay, and so my understanding is that's sort of that's a generic term for a technology that is used to determine, that the cell phone company uses to determine how far
From my understanding,
a particular
low-level
cell
cutter,
phone may
yes.
be from the tower with which it's connected. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's the generic term. In this particular case, there were particular cell phone companies that were involved. I believe Mr. Burgos' cell phone was with Sprint, Ms. Hernandez with AT&T.
Correct.
Each of those 2 companies has their own version of essentially this technology. Is that correct?
Yes. Sprint called it's all. The technique is called timing advance. Each different cell phone provider has a different name for it. Sprint called it per call measurement data. Verizon calls it RTT, which stands for real time tool. And I see. May I comment on what you're showing here, or do we want to wait, sir?
Okay. I'm sorry?
May I comment on the NILOS that you have here?
Sure.
Okay. So NILOS is different, though. So NILOS is a combination of, if I recall correctly, like 70 different data points within AT&T. Okay.
And they're linked.
One of those is timing advance, but the NILOS does not provide you just the timing advance, which is what we want. We do not use NELOS in our reports because we have shown it to be inaccurate at times.
Okay. Is there a different term that AT&T uses for its timing advance technology?
No. In fact, it was just last month that AT&T made timing advance available to us as in a report, and they just call it the timing advance report.
Now, with respect to these two cell phones, there were call data records, call detail records
Yes.
for both of the cell phones, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that, again, is just the data about the cell phone that was the date, time, call duration, parties involved in the call, the location of the cell phone tower. That was available for both phones, correct?
Yes.
But with respect to per-call measurement data, that was only available with respect to, I believe, Mr. Burgos' phone on the Sprint network. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So no per-call measurement data was available here with respect to Ms. Hernandez's phone, correct?
Gina Marr?
No,
The judge
because
does.
like I said, there's the NELOS report that was provided, but we don't use NELOS in our reports, in our analysis.
Just so the record is clear, I asked you if it was available for Ms. Hernandez's phone, I believe, and is that correct? And you said no. I want to just make sure that the record is clear. There were no timing advance data available for Ms. Hernandez's phone on the AT&T network, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
He's like, okay, thank you.
So this is a technology we've already said that the companies have developed to calculate the distance of a cell phone from the cell phone tower with which it's interacting.
Yes.
They developed that for their own purposes, basically in designing and the network.
Mr. Shelman, why is it important to give us all this information? It's like you're giving them the information and then he's just saying yes or no. It's like, why is it, tell me why it's important to give the history of the historical data of how things are done and whatnot. I mean, can you connect it, please,
Sure.
to what you want to get to?
Sure. I'll try to do that, but I can also explain, Your Honor, if it would be helpful at this point to do that.
Well, I mean, if you think it's ultimate, this is a trial right now. So, I mean,
Sir, we're at a trial right now.
we want it to sound pretty and everything, but I'd really like to get to the meat of. You haven't even mentioned. CAST one time in your entire cross-examination of the witness, which is what you believe is in fact flawed, and so therefore I'm kind of wondering when you're going to get to that.
Well, Your Honor, it's actually what we believe is flawed is what's called cell site location analysis, and the acronym for that is CSLI. CAST is simply the department, I understand, of the FBI. It's not the technology, so I'm sorry that was not clear. But we're talking about cell site location analysis as the methodology or technique of using this kind of data to draw inferences about the location of the phone.
Okay, can you get? Well, that's the first time you mentioned that too, by the way. So maybe you can get to that part.
Imagine.
Okay. So first we have the call detail records, and I simply wanted to bring out that we have call detail records with respect to both phones, but those records don't tell us anything about the location of the phone. They tell us something about the location of the cell phone tower, correct?
That's been asked and answered.
Okay, I just want to, fine. In terms of timing advance data, that was only available for Mr. Burgos' phone and not Ms. Hernandez.
That's been asked and
I
answered too,
understand.
sir. Let's just move on, please.
All right.
Oh my word, this is so hectic.
And
It's always
I want to make this
embarrassing.
point that these technologies were developed by the cell phone companies for their own purposes in managing the network, correct?
Yes, but we can still use that information for our purposes.
Okay, I understand. But the cell phone companies have been very clear that the technology was not determined or not developed to determine where the location of a particular cell phone was. Is that correct?
It is used to determine a general locations for their network optimization.
And what does that mean exactly for the network optimization?
Is like I explained before, they need to make sure that our signals, your signal and my signal from our phones are not reaching the antenna at the same millisecond. So it's using that information. So if you and I are the exact same distance away from a tower, it will tell my phone to delay your transmission for 2 or 3 milliseconds so that your signal hits the antenna in a different time space than mine does.
Shame, dude.
You
Time,
reviewed
bro.
per call measurement data from Mr. Burgos' phone on the Sprint network, correct? You reviewed those records?
Yes, yeah.
And you used those records for the purposes of creating your report, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I'd like to just show the witness for the purposes of
Does he realize the
record
time?
here,
Like the trial's supposed to start 8 minutes
a
ago.
page,
The jury's standing
I can-
outside.
I can mark it for purposes of this hearing as Defense Exhibit 1.
Well, Your Honor, I mean, to expedite things, we have the business record affidavit from Sprint. If we could just admit the whole thing at this point into evidence for the jury to see.
That's fine.
For the jury,
Yes, Your Honor, this is the.
One sounds
we're not,
ridiculous.
we're not here with the jury. You're going to have to examine him again when the jury's here.
Well, I guess we could stipulate to it like we have with previous evidence.
Well, this is for purposes of this hearing.
Okay.
So you can do a non-jury too, and then if you convert it into a jury, we can then convert it into a jury with tagging it with an exhibit tag at that point.
That's fine, Your Honor. Let's see. We're going to get the complete copy.
Oh, you guys.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Don't go
Your
near
Honor.
him, sir.
I misspoke. The Sprint business record affidavit has already been admitted into evidence.
All right.
So if you want, you can use that. That's fine.
Thank you.
Yes,
Can I have this
Ryan.
marked as Defense Exhibit 1 for the
Also,
Actually, it
we
could be
were buying a
non-jury
lunch day
one,
for the
non-jury
jury.
two.
Should I do that, or?
You can do that if you like, but she's got them there.
All right.
Judge, do you want those to be defense, non-jury one?
Whatever you'd like, Cindy.
He's like, whatever you'd like. Oh my word. Let's see if this works.
Thank you very much.
Defendants.
Oh, sorry, that does not work. I want to show you something.
Agent Masters, I'm showing you what's been marked as Defense Non-Jury Exhibit 1
Yes.
for the purpose of this hearing. Do you recognize that document?
Yes.
You've seen it before?
I have.
Do you remember seeing it when you reviewed the per-call measurement data records that were provided to you in this case?
It was provided in the records, yes.
Okay, thank you. What is the document?
This is a records key for folks, for recipients of these records that don't deal with them very often. It's a way to determine, okay, what does each column of these records represent?
Toward the bottom of the page, and you can see we've put this actually up on the monitor as well, Your Honor, so that it's visible. I want to direct your attention to the bottom third of the page, below where all of these terms are defined. And this is and I want you to read the report out loud, beginning with, let's start with the PCMD records enclosed.
We're going to need some coffee.
You want me to
around
read the
here.
entire thing?
Yes, please read.
Okay.
I don't think I wanted to read the entire thing. I can read.
Okay.
Point out. I mean, the jury's not here. This is just for me. And the record it's already in the record, so whatever
tell them,
appellate
Judge.
division is going to see it will be able to see it as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you've seen this document before. You've seen it in the records that were provided to you by Sprint for this case.
Yes.
And Sprint has said the PCMD records enclosed may not be accurate or complete, right?
First line.
Yes.
Sprint is unable to explain, certify, or testify to the accuracy of these records as they may be erroneous.
Correct.
Okay.
But you're missing a sentence there, sir. It says, nevertheless, it has been used in those situations as it is a Sprint record that could possibly lead to customer location. That's also significant.
I understand. That's further down.
Okay.
There's a number of sentences before we get to that.
Okay.
Sprint says,
Judge
please
is
be
like, I can
advised that
read.
there are known accuracy variances with Sprint PCMD reporting, correct?
Correct.
Are you just going to ask him to say whether it's correct that that's what it reads?
No, Your Honor.
Why don't you ask him
Correct.
questions with regard to it? Because
Okay.
I know what it reads because
Yeah.
I'm seeing it. And the reason I'm getting like this is because we're trying to save some time here. And if all you're going to say is, does it say, please be advised that there are known accuracy variances with Sprint PCMD reporting? Would have been better off just having him read the whole thing because all you're going to ask him is, does it say that? I don't want him to say, does it say that? Because it says that.
I understand, Your Honor.
And the record's clear what it says because the document's already in the record.
Yeah. The
So
document,
ask him questions with regard to that question, but not to
getting
read the
so snarky.
document.
this document reflects that Sprint
Spicy time.
says that these records were not created as a tool to identify the location of somebody, correct?
That's part of what it says, yes.
Okay. It's a disclaimer. What do you understand a disclaimer to be?
So what I read this to be is, first of all, I am aware that what they're referring to is the latitude and longitude coordinates within the PCMD reports, which I agree wholeheartedly. Those are not accurate. We don't use those in our reports, nor do we use those to find phones. What is accurate in the PCMD report is the distance that the phone is from the tower. That is highly accurate.
When you say highly accurate, what do you mean? That it can be identified with precision, or is there no margin of error whatsoever for the PCMD distance?
No, sir. What I'm saying is that it's highly accurate in our experience. We have used this to locate phones many, many times. And as far as your specificity argument, that phone is going to be located either within the arc or slightly inside of that arc.
Let's go back to the arc. So when you're referring to an arc, this is in our illustration. You recognize this as a slide from the report.
I do.
It's one of the early slides.
Yes.
And the arc you're referring to is this red band up at the top.
That's correct.
And the reason why it's represented as a band with some amount of width is a recognition that we can't really say with precision where a phone is in that geographic area, and the width of that band reflects the range of the geographic area or range within which the phone could be. Is that correct?
So that distance is a measurement of the chipset length, which is, we can go there, but it's a very long and complex explanation. So there is distance there because you are correct. If the PCMD report were to say the device was 1 mile away, it could be slightly under that or slightly over that. So we add width to that single point.
And so using this technology, what we can conclude is that the cell phone is a certain distance from the cell phone tower, but somewhere within that band. Is that correct?
Or slightly inside of it.
Slightly inside.
Yes.
But it is itself a geographic range across a distance of the city, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Alexis Noah. I should make this
And
honorary
this
snort because
disclaimer,
remember-
and I don't know if you share this opinion, but this disclaimer, Sprint is saying that the purpose for which we generated these records is not for the purpose of identifying the location of a phone. Is that not correct?
Well, not for locating it for law enforcement. It is designed to locate it for network purposes. But you're correct. This technique was not designed for us.
Thank you.
The judge will need a copy
Let's
after
go
this.
to the last set of.
Bro, let's look at the clock.
Let's go to the last. Oh, I wanted to just ask one more thing.
Sure.
About PCMD really quickly, but PCMD.
Welcome, Lori.
The other PCMD is the name basically for the proprietary software or technology that is used by Sprint for this purpose, right?
Right.
And by proprietary technology, I mean that it's the personal you understand that to mean the personal property of the company.
I don't have any knowledge or opinion of if PCMD is owned by Sprint or if it's owned by a different company and Sprint leases it. I have no knowledge of that.
But what I mean by that is that the company owns it and controls whether anybody else can see how it functions.
He doesn't have any opinion with regard to who owns it. You included own in your sentence.
That technology, does it mean anything to talk about a proprietary technology or algorithm?
I understand what you're saying when you say proprietary, but I'm not sure really what your question is, sir.
Well, I guess what I mean is that this technology Sprint developed for Sprint's own purposes, and it's not generally accessible. It does not make it available to third parties for their use.
Well, timing advance is used across the networks, and it's within the designed by the 3GPP, which is the entity or the organization that designed the network infrastructure that led to 3G, 4G, and 5G. So it's within those parameters.
I guess what I mean is that if I wanted to access Sprint's per call measurement data system to verify the accuracy of geolocation data that's produced by the system, I wouldn't be able to do that, would I? As a third party.
If you had access to the time it took for the signal to be sent and returned, then yeah, you could certainly make that calculation. It's like I said before, it's just a function of how the time it takes, the speed at which the signal travels, and then those two will determine the distance. I mean, it does get more complicated than that, but that is the basic level.
All right.
That page is
Well,
done.
let's just talk very briefly then about Google, okay?
Sure.
So there are also Google location data that you
Thank you,
relied
Steve.
on in your report, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think you mentioned that Google location data, Google provides location data that may be drawn from a number of different telecommunication sources. Is that correct?
From different sources, yes.
Yeah, from different sources. And so some of those are GPS satellites.
Correct.
Okay, but also you mentioned it could be from cell phone towers,
Judge
Correct.
Grizzly.
Bluetooth, conceivably.
There is a Bluetooth component, but nothing in my report regarding the Bluetooth.
Okay. Cell phone location information from other or nearby cellular towers?
Well, that would be the cellular, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Internet protocol address information?
It would be from Wi-Fi. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, IP, but yeah, I'm not sure
All right.
where you're going with that.
So the data that's produced, geolocation data that's produced by Google could come from any one of these different sources, correct?
The Google location data that's provided in the location data report either comes from cellular, Wi-Fi, or GPS, nothing else.
Okay. And are you saying that the only data points in your report that you used or reported about were drawn from one source of those data, or?
Two sources, from
What were they?
from GPS and Wi-Fi.
Okay. And what is the accuracy of each of those in terms of its ability to identify location?
So Google, in addition to providing the latitude longitude coordinates determined by Google, it also provides a error radius for each individual line item.
Is there any way to verify that you could verify what that error radius is?
If I open Google Maps while I'm driving down the road, I verify it.
But I mean, is anybody able to independently verify the reported radius?
Not.
Like, to determine whether it's being accurately reported by Google?
That's Google making that determination.
Right, but nobody can review that or verify that the error radius has been
Can't believe how long it's
calculated
gone
or
on.
reported correctly.
For a specific line item, for a specific device, no. But for the technology used to create that line item, Google has several patents out explaining their methodology and their technique, as well as there's been academic articles about how they do it.
All right. I think that's it, Your Honor.
Oh, my word, is
Can you
it?
redirect?
Very briefly, Your Honor. Very, very briefly.
What's the
Hold
one?
you to that.
And you can, Your
Judge
Honor.
Judy.
With regards to the advanced timing that was utilized, or the timing advanced techniques, there was a disclaimer, and you did. Do you still have
I do.
defense? Okay.
Thank you, Janet.
You wanted to talk about the nevertheless portion of it.
Right.
Could you please explain why that had some significance to you and what you wanted to talk about with regards to that particular sentence?
Sure. So the disclaimer, the way I read the disclaimer is this is, forgive the term, but legalese from Sprint saying
I
that
like the term.
we can't promise you that this is where the phone was. However, CAST has been using PCMD timing advance for years, and we are consistently successfully locating devices, victims of crime, fugitives, missing persons, using this technique. As I said before, timing advance is my number one go-to and what I ask for first when I'm trying to locate a phone.
No further questions, Your Honor.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You may step down.
Oh, Judge is not
And Mr. Schenk is ready to go, but I need to take a real quick break. And
Yeah, he needs a coffee. I told you that. Let's put Judge Judy here.
I believe I probably should have had the jury now, in retrospect, come after lunch as opposed to now.
After lunch?
So
Shame.
I may have to ask him to leave and come back. So.
Oh my gosh.
All right.
It's almost 11 a.m. there. So now I don't know what's going to happen. He said he may have to ask the jury to leave and come back after lunch because he needs a break now. And we know those breaks are like half an hour long. That was exhausting. I can't believe that defense attorney. He goes on and on and on. Just like no time management whatsoever. Right? You can see he's like in his head and he's got his whole theory. But like, we don't have all day, bro. There's a schedule. This was supposed to finish half an hour ago. I mean, the judge specifically said, the judge is going to be so pissed now because he said to the jury, please be here at 10:15. We are starting at 10:30, no later. And then they're just standing outside there now for 25 minutes. And he said there will be no food for them either because they were coming in later. Oh, that judge. He must feel so bad for the jury now and he's going to go out there and get coffee, I'm sure. Espresso time. Snarky time. Ryan says the judge is going to have a Captain Quinn chalkboard moment. Oh, man. So thank you all for being here. They actually, in fact, started this hearing so late that... Let's just put it like this. Sorry, if that. I hope it's not too distracting. Hold on. I will put it back on if it is on, okay? They started the hearing so late that I almost thought they started court early. But that was not the case. They just started the hearing really late. And it went on and on and on and on. M. Schmidt says, thank you for closed caption. Yeah, I always have it. I always have it on. So yesterday, I think there was another glitch happening on YouTube. So sorry about that. Let's find is my presentation here? Oh, yeah. We're looking at the ceiling right now. Believe me, you don't want to just look at the ceiling, right? Steph, thank you for your £4 super sticker. I'm definitely going to be stocking up on so much coffee later. We're going to need it. Okay, so let me just put this here. Laredo. Laredo, Texas. That's what we're looking at. Just hold on. I just want to see. Didn't I make a new one? Because I did. Where is it? Yeah, it's still that one. Okay. Oh, my word. So we are looking at the trial hasn't even started for today. The trial of Ronald Anthony Burgos-Aviles. And he's facing the death penalty for the murders of Grizelda Hernandez, 27, and their baby, Dominic Hernandez. This happened on April 9th of 2018. As a reminder, this content is for educational purposes only, and for adults only. We didn't even get to have an intro or anything with trigger warnings at all, because we just went straight in for this hearing today. It was a Daubert hearing, and a Daubert hearing permits the parties to examine the challenged expert in an open court to develop his or her testimony for purposes of evaluating its admissibility. So what that was all about, you see, they're just showing us the court seal now. I can put that on, hold on. That's all they're showing us right now. So I don't know we'll have to wait and see just what's happening here. So, yesterday, I believe it was Eduardo that stood up, and the defense filed a motion to have this Daubert hearing because they don't want certain the cell phone expert that we just saw, the FBI agent, special agent, to testify. They want their testimony inadmissible, which is so silly when you think about it, because they're arguing about, he had the victim's phone with him in his truck. We already saw pictures of that as well. So they're arguing about how reliable the cell phone data is, the cell phone tower data is, and the location. But the thing is, the victim's phone, both phones, but the one was not connected to the network from what we learned yesterday, both phones were in his truck, and he drove home to change after the murders. The phones went with him, and then the phones came back, and so that is the data that they have. So throwing the data out is... wow, when you think, why are there phones in his truck in the first place? And it's something he really, really messed up on. He forgot, because he was like, telefono in the dash cam we saw yesterday. Joey Penfold, thank you for your 99 pound super chat. I really appreciate it. Yeah, look at the face you're using there. Yeah, that's the face of I need coffee, right? So Izzy says if they go past their allowed time, in my opinion, they should be held in contempt. Just my opinion. Right? And it's not just like 5 minutes. They went half an hour beyond time. Jay says, I'm buying me a Starbucks coffee. Do you have Starbucks in the Netherlands? We do. We do have them. They're not like everywhere. The Dutch coffee, I shouldn't say coffee shops, because in the Netherlands, coffee shop means something else. The Dutch cafes have their own coffee brands and their own things and franchises. So there's just a few, like for tourists, just a few little Starbucks here and there. I think I've only ever been to 2. And they're mostly at like the train stations or in the major cities or whatever. So yes, but there's lots of nice coffee here, if that's the question. MCM11 says more coffee for G. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to get up just now and make coffee. Oh my goodness. I just want to see what happens here. I mean, are they at least going to tell us? You know, if the judge is like, I'm going to have to tell the jury. He said he may have to tell the jury to go home and come back. Well, is he going to do that? And are we going to know? I hope so. Cameraman, if you're watching, can you please let us know? Kind of let us know. Oh, thank you. Shame. Oh my word. This was hectic. So, ASB says, I hate Starbucks. It's not the best coffee in the world, I must say. But some of the other drinks are okay. They're okay. But the coffee sucks, yeah. I must agree. Sorry if you're a Starbucks fan. So, Michelle says, is this the guy? We waited to arrive. So we started today at a later time. Too bad he didn't miss the plane. Yes. Well, the witness was excellent. I mean, he is an expert. He's an FBI special agent living in Hawaii. Isn't that just so cool? Like, that is, I think that would be my dream job. Like, damn, FBI special agent in Hawaii. Oh, like based there. Dream job right there. So anyway, maybe that's why they were saying, yeah, him like flying in and all of that. This was the expert witness, yes, and this was the Daubert hearing. We haven't even started with day 4 of the trial today yet. Vanessa, thank you so much. Look at the little sticker. Really appreciate it. So, welcome to everyone. Welcome to day 4, morning session, which might already not even be a morning session. Imagine that. It's not even a morning session based on, right now it is, we'll see what they do, but based on how late everything is run. That it's almost like morning session cancelled. Judge is snarky right now. He's really upset. And then like, we might just have an afternoon session today. So today is Thursday. So there'll be afternoon session today and 2 sessions tomorrow, I assume. And Monday, they said so far the court will be open, but not on Tuesday because it's July 4th, obviously, in the USA. And so, public holiday. And therefore, the court will be on Monday and Wednesday. Kimberly, thank you so much for your $2 super chat. Silver Bullet says, so when the jury comes back in, we'll have to hear this testimony again? I wonder, because the judge is ultimately going to decide if this is admissible or not. Now, at what point does the judge decide after this hearing? That's what I want to know. Is he going to take a little break, have a coffee, and come back? You know? PT says, late today, but here it is, Fury. Oh my word, PT, you spoil him so much. He's so spoiled. If you guys want to see Fury's snack cupboard and his spoils, just check out my second channel, because he features there quite a bit as well. Wildfire says, Dutch Brothers is the best here, I agree. You'll see? Oh man. Okay, so what I want to quickly show you, where is that? I have, let me just see. Let me find it. There's a press release from yesterday based on this case. Just hold on for the Webb County media alert. So let me just save this image quickly. Okay, and let's bring it up here. Now where is it? Did you download it? Oh, it's probably in another file. Hold on, just stand by 1 second. Sure, if you guys could see my files. There's so many cases, right? So much going on always. Okay, no, didn't want to show this. Hold on. Just gonna bring that across for a second. Yes. How about this? Okay, is it big enough? Can you see? Okay, so they said media alert for immediate release, date Wednesday, the 28th of June, 2023. 4th of July, holiday closure. In observance of Independence Day holiday, all Webb County administrative offices will be closed on Tuesday, July 4th, 2023. The Webb County Sheriff's Department administrative offices will also be closed. All emergency services will be available. For additional information, you can call the county's main phone line. There we go. And that's what they have. Okay, they're coming back. They're coming back. Hold on.
So the jury's going to come back at 1. Okay? That gives me...
Jury's coming back at
allows me
1.
to take my... Release the pressure cap
Release the pressure
from my
cap.
steamer. And then
Wow.
we'll,
So damn
take it from
snarky.
there. Okay. So are you going to call... Is the defense going to call any witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Manfed Schenk by Zoom.
Okay, the hearing continues.
We are... If any of you... Let's see. One second.
That's right, Karim. Fury.
Uh-oh.
Not furry. Fury.
Can you put up
Use
any
the
of
pressure
your
cap.
computers on Zoom and connect it, and then connect it to so that we can see his face?
The judge literally said the jury's been sent back home.
Cindy, how does
Coming
it-
back
remember
at
we used to have the
1.
computer here. That's how we did that last time.
Yeah,
So this.
but,
One second.
but one of them does need to get on so that way he can see them.
This
Yeah, you need to get on.
That's
So
right.
whoever's doing the question needs to get on so that they can see you. And that's the way I guess we'll do it that way.
The judge has a pressure. They said he's gonna just
Yeah.
calm down before the jury's in the
Yes.
room. Nice.
It's the same login.
And of course, and we can you can get on if you want. The camera would be there. The courtroom camera.
Oh, okay.
But he needs to get on just so that
So that it's, I see what you're saying.
yeah.
Okay, so we're
You can get on if you want. It doesn't matter. Whatever you want to do.
And then, do you want them to have another device to have it on that one, or you don't need it on
Well,
that one?
I'm gonna have them plug it in.
Right there. It's
Oh,
just-
is that a computer that can get plugged into the system?
There's already one plugged in.
Because it has a different device. That looks like a Mac.
Oh man. I'm gonna go get coffee in a moment.
You know, Macs are a little
There,
different.
there. I just let them both in.
Huh?
I just let them both in.
Oh, they're in?
I just, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we got you. Mr. Shutterman. Ms. Lozelle. And you don't have to worry about the mics. Oh. So, what? Is it connected? You know? Is it? Oh.
I'll move it.
You can do the handoff. I think we're okay though. I think it's connected.
Oh my word.
Where is it? There it is.
Michelle says, I sadly thought it was the lawyer we had to wait for, not the FBI agent.
Oh, it was
Defense
over
lawyer
there.
should have missed the plane.
He's looking for it.
Sarah, he's fast asleep right now.
Okay. So you can read it.
Oh my gosh.
Judges, that's unmuted.
Yeah, judges, it's unmuted. What are we hearing now?
Mr. Schenk, can you hear us?
Oh, on Zoom. Okay.
We
can
can't
see
hear
the
you,
screen
though.
here.
Can you say something? Test, 1, 2, 3, anything? Nope, we can't hear you. You need to work on your audio. So on your audio link, no, now you're muted. Now you muted yourself.
Check your mic settings, sir. So Pandora's Karma, what are they doing now?
Huh?
So like here, the
What
defense
does it
is
mean?
bringing a witness, I
No, we're-
think, as part of the Daubert Hearing
give me a second.
to discredit
Hold on a second.
the
Don't move
FBI
anything.
special
I think
agent.
maybe-
or to
Maybe I did
counteract what he said.
something.
I
No?
think.
Say it
And
again,
then-
Mr. Schenk?
1, 2, 3.
There you go. There you
Then
go.
the
It
judge
was
has to
me.
decide if the
Okay,
evidence will
we're
be
gonna-
admissible or not.
All right. Get close to the device so we can get you good.
Let's put Judge Judy back up.
Yeah, put it on defense counsel, please. Oh, it's not coming in? Oh. Are you connected to the defense tape? Yeah. It's not connected yet.
This is a Daubert hearing.
There you are. It'll come up in a minute. Well,
Put
no.
in chat again what it means.
Hold on.
Here we go.
Is it defense already?
It's all because the defense, they don't want the cell phone tower ping accuracy location data. All they don't want that.
Actually, it doesn't matter if that's off. I think I need that on because of my court reporter. See, these microphones will only work for whoever's not here. And then we receive Mr. Schenk's communication through these microphones only, not through the. Well, the microphones then become speakers, and we'll receive his audio through these devices are converted into they're microphones and speakers. So
We haven't heard
Don't
both
ask me
sides
the
yet. We're
technology
going to
on
hear
that.
the defense's witness now.
okay, it's not on yet. Are you connected? There it is. So if you put it on the speaker view, well, let me see if I can do it over here. There it is. Good. Mr. Schenk, can you see Mr. Shoneman there?
Yes, I can.
Very good. Can you hear him, Mr. Shoneman?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Shoneman, can you say something to make sure that Mr. Schenk can hear you?
Good morning, Mr. Schenk.
Good morning.
Very good. We're good to go.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Oh, now I'm going to need that microphone to be on because the courtroom microphone. There you go. Thank you. Let's proceed. Oh yes, Mr. Schenk. Thank you.
The jury's gone home.
Please
They're
raise your
coming
right
back
hand
at
and be
1.
sworn, sir.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
All right, good morning, Mr. Schenk. Will you please state your name for the record?
My name is Manfed Schenk, spelled MANFRED SCHENK.
Where are you employed?
I'm employed at Cherry Biometrics Incorporated.
And what is Cherry Biometrics Incorporated?
It's a technology company which operates in the area of biometrics and cell tower technology.
What is your position at Cherry Biometrics?
I'm the chief technical advisor.
And how long have you been employed there?
We started business, in this particular technology area in 2009.
And what is your educational background?
I have a associate degree in engineering, a bachelor's degree in mathematics, a master's degree in mathematics.
What is your professional experience prior to your current position?
I was involved in the area of software development for numerous companies, including I started at IBM I moved on to the IGP, and that's telegraph. From there,
We can't understand, Mr. Schenk, we can't understand you, so perhaps you can, if you're as close to the device as possible, it's fine. Maybe you can attempt to keep your, I don't know if it was the movement of your head or what it was, but perhaps you can attempt to keep it. Sometimes that happens. I'm just assuming it may not have been that, but just try and keep that movement of your bodies to a minimum. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, could you continue with your professional experience prior to your current position, please?
I was a software developer for numerous companies and organizations, as I said, including IBM, IT&T, from there also subcontracted with NASA and various defense contractors.
Do you have any specialized training in cell phone analysis?
I was involved in my entire personal career for 50 years in the area of telecommunication. And as it relates to software development as well as networks, we control the things.
And have you been qualified previously as an expert to testify in court regarding cell phone analysis?
I have.
How many times, or approximately how many times?
I'm in excess of 50 occasions on both the local, the state, as well as federal jurisdiction.
And have you ever been previously qualified as an expert to testify regarding cell phone analysis in the state of Texas by a Texas court?
Yes, I have. Do you recall those cases? Not particularly. Certainly one of them had the opportunity of releasing an individual. That was the Robert Fisher case last few years. That's one.
Okay, thank you.
Is that right?
Your Honor, I'd like to share a document with Mr. Schenk, and I need to be enabled or as a host, I believe. Thank you. Yes. All right, Mr. Schenk, I'm sharing with you a document that I'm going to mark for the purposes of this hearing as Defense Exhibit Non-Jury 2. And ask if you recognize that document.
Just so we can avoid that, Mr. Elizondo, has that been offered? Has that been shared with you?
Yes, this has been shared with me, Your Honor. No objections for purposes of this hearing.
Are you offering?
Yes, Your Honor.
What's it called?
It's it's been identified as Defense
Defendant's what?
Exhibit Non-Jury number 2.
Thank you. Submitted. So you want to have that back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sorry.
And
Thank you.
have you reviewed materials or records in relation to the cell phone evidence in the case of Ronald Burgos-Aviles?
Yes.
What materials have you reviewed?
I've used the all detail records as well as the PCMD records, as well as a particular document which indicated disclaimer as cautionary statement by Sprint in regards to their PCMD records.
Have you also reviewed the CAS report of FBI Special Agent Andrew Masters?
Yes.
And on the basis of your review, have you prepared a report summarizing your conclusions of the evidence in this case?
I have.
All right. Again, I want to screen share a document with you, ask you to identify it. I'm going to have this marked as Defense Exhibit Non-Jury 3 for the purposes of this hearing. I'm sorry, thought we had this open. My fault. All right, thank you very much. So, Mr. Schenk, I'm sharing with you on the screen, or trying to share with you on the screen, a document and ask you, it's been marked for identification for the purposes of the hearing as defense exhibit non-jury number 3.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the admission of defense non-jury exhibit number 3. I don't think they've laid the proper predicate to qualify Mr. Schenk as an expert in this field. If I may, Your Honor, have permission to voir dire the expert or the witness that they're offering as an expert.
On the issue of...
Yes, Your Honor, I don't believe they've laid down any foundation to establish that he has any knowledge in what he's about to testify pursuant to his report.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're not on. Are you on?
I'm about to join.
We told us to stop sharing the screen now.
I'm going to take this now.
You want to stop sharing?
Would you like us to, or should we do that?
With that, Your Honor.
For now.
Coffee. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Schenk. I'd like to talk to you about the CV that was admitted, your CV that was admitted as defendant's non-jury exhibit number 2. Now, you said earlier that in your entire personal career, which is a span of about 50 years, you've always been in telecommunication services. Is that what you testified to earlier?
That in other areas, but certainly lots of telecommunications work, both sometimes for banks and sometimes for brokerage industry, but much of it for the defense work, both for the Navy as well as for the Air Force.
Okay, well let's go back then. I'm looking at your CV at the portion. Do you have a copy in front of you by chance? Because I don't think it's up on the screen.
I do have but I have to jump out of this Zoom thing here in order to be able to. Okay.
If we could go to the very bottom, please, of page 2, or if you'd like, Your Honor, we can get it up on ours.
Whatever you think is...
Okay, right there's fine. So let's go into the portion, independent consultant. So you say that you assisted at International Telephone and Telegraph, is that correct?
That's correct.
What year was that?
Goes back to the 9 to 1975, something like that order.
So, I'm sorry, you said 1975, is that when you started?
No, 1969, I think.
Okay, so apologies. So 1969 through 1975, you were an independent consultant for International Telephone and Telegraph. Is that correct?
Okay.
And back during 1969 and 1975, were cell phones common, something that an ordinary person in America would have had?
No. So started about 1973.
Okay. And at your time as an independent consultant for telephone and telegraph, did you review call detail records?
I did not. They were not available and did not start reviewing them until 2009.
Okay. So as far as locating phones or reviewing call detail records or reviewing timing advanced methodologies, you had no training or experience doing that at International Telephone and Telegraph, correct?
Well, the timing advance is a fairly straightforward technique. And yes, I had lots of experience in that.
That's not my question. Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. I just need you to answer my question, okay? During your tenure as an independent consultant at International Telephone and Telegraph, did you have any training, experience working with cell detail records and or timing advanced techniques and methodology and data?
Oh, yes, exactly. Crime line.
They don't have time in advance yet. The area of cell phone,
In
all
nine-
detailed records, no.
Okay, all right. And then you say the next thing on there is a defense contractor and cell phone provider. Who was that with, and at what time was that?
ITT was a cell phone provider for the country of Egypt.
Okay. So that work then, it relates to IT&T as a defense contractor and cell phone provider in the design of their formative cellular infrastructures.
This judge is going to get snarky.
Okay, so, and then we've already established no training or working with CDRs. Okay. From 1992 to 1995, you were at the Riverside Research Institute in New York, New York, as a medical research analyst. At that time period, did you deal with CDRs and or timing advance data and or GPS?
I did not.
Okay. Moving up in your professional experience, from 1995 to 2001, you were at Century Corp, formerly DSP Inc. And it says here you were an IBM supplier and business partner and Sony business partner manager. At any time during 1995 through 2001 at Century Corp, did you review or analyze or document CDRs, timing advance data, and or GPS data?
Did not.
Okay. Now let's talk about, you said that you started then, okay, so moving up, professional experience, Senior Technology Officer 2001 for Cherry Biometrics Inc. That's correct?
Correct.
So you testified earlier that you did not start reviewing CDRs, timing advance, all that data until 2009. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So between
the
go ahead.
Cherry Biometrics.
Okay. So it's safe to say then at Cherry Biometric between 2001 and 2009, none of that data was reviewed by you or analyzed by you.
That's correct.
Okay. So then in 2009, when you did start reviewing this type of data, what kind of training did you receive?
I was self-taught.
Self-taught. So no certifications?
They are so destroying this guy right now. Self-taught.
Ultimately, I received some certifications from an organization called.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry.
One second, Mr. Schenk. Can you repeat from when you started with saying ultimately?
Oh dear.
As I said, I started reviewing the full detail records starting in 2009. I was self-taught with regards to that information.
So you were self-taught.
That's it.
Okay. So no formal training, no formal experience then in analyzing and reviewing this, it's all self-taught?
Oh, man.
As I said, ultimately I got a certification.
From who?
Wireless. As a wireless trainer.
I'm sorry.
Wireless analyst. I completed in 2018.
In 2018 you received a certification? From who again? I'm sorry, it's very difficult to hear.
Yes, 2018.
From who?
I don't know the name of the organization. They train FBI agents. They certify people. I believe they're located in New York. They provide courses and they test you on those particular courses. Based upon that, you are qualified as a wireless analyst.
So I mean, this is you. Just to clarify, then you don't recall the name of the certifying organization that gave you a certificate qualifying you as an expert in this field?
Yes, well, I had been testifying since 2009 before I got that certification.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. I'm just asking you a simple question. You do not recall the organization that certified you as an expert to testify in this field, which you received. You don't recall the organization that gave you the certification to testify in this field back in 2018?
I provided that in my doc. So
Could you
readily available.
Could you point that out? Could you? I mean, it's there in front of you. Could you please point out where it is that you indicate you got that certification?
Yes, I included that certification along with my CV.
I only have your CV right here. This is all that I received. So is it in your CV?
Apparently not.
Okay.
Not pointing to it.
All right. Well, we can carry on.
It's like apparently not.
Now, you testified earlier that you have been qualified as an expert in several courts to testify as an expert, correct?
Right.
Now, isn't it true that you've also been disqualified as an expert based off of the lack of experience and training?
I don't believe that's correct. No. I was just, my testimony was not received on one particular occasion in Colorado.
Well, I mean, let's talk about that. In the People of Colorado versus Daryl Dickerson and Hassan Jones, case number 14CR3119, you went through what Colorado calls a Shrek hearing, which is the equivalent of what we're having here today. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Me too.
And isn't it true that the judge at the end of that hearing disqualified you from testifying as an expert witness in the defense's case in chief?
He was not interested in hearing my testimony. That's correct.
So it's fair to say you were disqualified.
Hey, that's your turn. Fine.
Well, it's not my term. It's what the court said. Yes, Your Honor.
Let's move on.
All right, we can move on. Isn't it true that you were also well, you weren't disqualified, but isn't it true that you were taken off as an expert in the case of United States versus Winter Eating, EADY, number 2:12CR00415 DCN3?
Yes.
Okay.
Shame. This is, yeah. Rosie says, this is a little bit, it's a bit embarrassing. Can't believe how the defense grilled
Now-
an FBI special agent.
Since 2009, when you've been analyzing CDR and timing advance and GPS data, how have you utilized that skill set?
We're testifying in regards to what my interpretation of the data is and what it implies.
Okay.
And what you can conclude from it and what you cannot conclude from it.
And you've done this for defense?
That is correct.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't you a co-founder or co-owner of Cherry Biometrics Inc.?
Yes.
Okay. So through your company, you've been a defense expert to testify for defense with regards to CDRs, GPS, and timing advance.
That's correct.
What else have you testified for a defense for at your time at Cherry Biometrics?
Mr. Elizondo,
Yes, Your Honor.
this is a voir dire.
Yes, Your Honor.
Are you done with the voir dire?
I have a couple more questions, Your Honor.
All right,
It's
yes,
just
sir.
this and one more area, and we'll be done. So if you could answer that question, what other areas or expertise have you provided as a co-owner and employee, I assume, of Cherry Biometrics Inc.?
On one particular occasion, I had the opportunity to testify in a fingerprint case.
Fingerprints, so biometrics.
Right.
What about, if I can have one moment, Your Honor. Okay, so fingerprints. What about DNA analysis?
No.
No?
No DNA.
No DNA. Any other type of expertise you've provided aside from fingerprint analysis and historic cell site analysis?
I believe I did testify in one photographic case.
Photographs.
well, I believe that's also in Texas. So,
Okay. And
yeah.
okay. And so your firm, Cherry Biometrics, pretty much is a one-stop shop for defense attorneys to pull in and get a hired gun to testify against the state in any given case and provide whatever expertise is necessary.
We offer, our main emphasis is in the area of self-out.
Okay, that's fair. And finally, with regards, so you testified that you normally utilize this expertise of yours to testify in cases such as this for the defense. Have you ever utilized that expertise to locate individuals who've been kidnapped?
No.
Have you ever utilized it to locate
Good question.
fugitives?
Was there witness said yes?
No.
Have you ever utilized it to search, detect, and track down phones of victims of crimes?
No.
So in all of your experience then, it's only been to testify in court for defense?
No.
Witness for the
There was one
defense.
occasion in Iowa where I had an
Prosecutions. Asking questions.
opportunity to testify for the prosecution.
Okay, that's a fair assessment. But ultimately, this expertise you have is all self-taught, and then in addition to one certification that you received in 2018 that was not provided and that you don't even remember the name of.
Sorry, was that a question or was it a statement?
Well, that was a question.
Okay. The answer is yes.
Okay.
I agree with your statement.
And lastly, I'm sorry to stretch this out, but lastly, the training that you did receive with that certification, did you learn directly from network engineers and data record management at Sprint? Did you learn directly or get trained directly from people from Sprint?
No.
What about people from Verizon,
No.
T-Mobile,
No.
AT&T?
No.
So you don't know the interworkings or the nuances that each of these service providers have when it comes to how they store data and the CDRs that they provide?
Well, I certainly know the CDRs that they provide, and I'm certainly familiar with the networks that control those and how that data is in fact captured, because I have designed and programmed many networks and network controllers.
Okay, so you design networks yourself?
Yes.
When was that?
At the Bayesian company, we designed the telecommunication networks. I worked at Western Union. They did telecommunication networks. So it's several okay.
Okay, but when? What time? What year?
Shame. I wouldn't put him in the category of Dr. Lewis. She's like in her own category.
Early 1970s.
Shame on the defense.
So before 1970,
An
before cell
expert-
phones were commonplace in America.
That has very outdated information.
Okay, continue.
Shame.
You were going to list another one in another date.
The defense is the worst
I
I've
was
seen
trying
so
to
far.
remember the network developed by the Bayesian company. I think that it preceded was into the late 1960s.
The late 1960s on the one you just listed,
Yes, right.
and again before 1973 when telephones were commonplace in America.
Well, 73 was the beginning.
Was the
There were
beginning.
several concepts.
But you developed them before the beginning of cell phones being commonplace then.
That's correct. Yes. It was at ITT and doing modeling.
Objection, Your Honor, narrative. At this point, Your Honor, the state would object to having this proffered expert testify. I don't think he has any requisite or knowledge in this area. In particular, to testify, he testified himself, he was self-learned, and although he did say that he did receive an accreditation in 2018, that was one, not provided to the state, and two, the witness could not even name the certification organization or any of such information regarding it.
Your Honor, Mr. Schenk has an engineering background. He's been in this field for 50 years. He's a pioneer.
I object to that being a mischaracterization of the evidence, Your Honor.
The evidence, I think his resume or CV is in evidence, and so I think the court can make reference to it. The first line is he's computer science with extensive radio wave tracking, monitoring, communication systems programming experience. He was an early design member of Project Apollo. We just heard extensive testimony from the state's witness, who's an FBI agent. I think that's a one-stop shop for the prosecution. I don't believe he has any experience testifying for the defense, yet the court heard from him, notwithstanding the fact that his educational background was in business and accounting. What we're offering the court here is an engineer with 50 years of relevant experience.
Relevant experience.
I think there's...
I want to make sure that we understand what we're doing here. The expert that you're putting on right now is for purposes of striking your expert.
That is correct, Your Honor.
You're not moving to strike that expert in case that expert testifies, if they decide to put that expert on during their case in chief. We'll deal with that issue at that point. This is merely being used to knock out your expert, per se.
Correct, Your Honor, but we are going to elicit testimony from a expert that they're proffering to give his expert opinion as to why he believes Special Agent Master's report is incorrect. And I think I've shown enough to the court to justify my position that...
But he's also testified in other cases as well, which he may have been knocked out. I think you said on one occasion.
I believe there was several more than that.
Well, the only thing in evidence is one occasion, and he's testified that he's testified in others. Not that that really has anything to do with me, quite frankly. I can, it's not the factor that weighs extremely heavily, but it is a factor that, in fact, they can use later to say he struck down. He didn't allow this expert to testify despite the fact that he may have been testified in other cases. In fact, you mentioned the case. I think you're the one that listed the case. Is it a Brown case or something like that? To me, Iowa case or something like that where he testified for the government.
Oh, okay.
In any event, I do here at least, this area seems to be so broad, and there's so many different areas that I think that Mr. Masters talked about, which folks, governments, law enforcement agencies, and other people that provide that type of service seem to grab from whatever information and data they can grab. So even if he wasn't able to give us the exact
My miracle
science
moment,
or
that's
the
how he said
exact
it.
same
If you have an
methodology
alternate,
used by
tell me.
Mr. Masters in his presentation, he certainly can talk about the basics of the radio waves from a particular tower.
Angela says thanks to all the mods. Yes, thanks.
Work similarly. The data, of course, that is arrived from that is in fact grabbed by all these agencies to be and put into their particular methodology of doing things, whether it be Google or whether it be whatever agency is grabbing these particular data points and using them to
is this a
come up
normal amount of time for a Daubert hearing?
with
I
a
don't think so.
conclusion. Some of them do share the way they do it, and some of them don't share the way they do it.
But they planned about an hour.
Despite whether or not it's proprietary or shared, people are using them and they are coming out with results. So based on that, I think and based on the situation in this case, I think I would be risking too much to allow him not to test, or to not allow him to testify. So I'm going to allow him to testify.
Okay.
Let's proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Schenk, I believe where we I'm sorry. Thank you.
Let me, he's already on. Sorry. Let's remove the, I guess the stop share.
Your Honor,
I think you got the share on, Mr. This one.
no, that's
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay.
And I'm again sharing this document with Mr. Schenk because I believe that's where we left off when the voir dire began. So yes.
Hold on, Your Honor. The state maintains its same objection.
Okay.
So, Mr. Schenk, where we left off, I was showing you, I believe where we left off was, I was showing you what's been marked as defendant's non-jury exhibit number 3. Do you recognize that document that's on the screen now?
Okay.
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
That's my report of the cell tower data and the PCMP data that was sent
I want to spell it like this.
in this case, first Ronald Burgos.
Thank you, Anita.
Oh, I have a copy. Thank you. Your Honor, may I approach?
Yeah.
I'd offer defendant's exhibit non-jury number 3 for the purpose of this hearing.
And what is on jury 3?
It's Mr. Schenk's report.
Oh, for purpose of this hearing.
Yes. And I have a copy for Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Grizzly, you filed for purpose of this hearing, Mr. Masters.
I'm sorry, report?
Yes.
Oh, well, that was part of the general discovery, bringing it in during trial.
Right. Did you file it for purpose of this hearing?
No, I have not, Your Honor. I don't believe we utilized it in, no.
For purposes of this hearing, I think you probably should. And you can, are you going to use it for anything else?
We are going to use it
during trial.
During trial. In fact, as soon as we're done here.
If he survives this hearing.
Correct.
So, in any event, I think we can use it, if he survives this hearing, use it for both. But much of what was discussed is in those reports.
That is correct.
Just clarifying the spelling I had up, you guys. I wasn't trying to be funny. That's literally what I heard. But now,
And-
this is what I see.
Your Honor, I don't know
Tiny
if this is
zoom.
necessary at this point because the court has already said that it would hear from this witness, but we offered Mr. Schenk as an expert in the field of cell phone analysis
Okay.
for the purpose of this hearing.
Can you guys believe this is not even the trial yet for today?
So, Mr. Schenk, you've already testified about the materials you reviewed in this case, and you've testified that you prepared a report summarizing your conclusions. Can you tell us what your conclusions were?
That the CDR records that in fact are offered in evidence for this particular case are very they're insufficiently precise of location to be of significant value, and I think that Mr. Master also indicated that the error rate on CDR records is so large that he apparently does not rely on them very, very heavily. So I certainly agree with Mr. Master on that particular point.
It's very, very, very difficult to understand you.
It really
If you don't
is.
sit up.
I even got his name
and
wrong
come close
initially.
to your device.
I could hardly hear
You are
this
not
guy.
going to be
Shame.
able to take your testimony. You need to be able to speak clearly and firmly and as,
Thank you, Miss Joy.
as clearly as you could perhaps move your mouth. Quite frankly, I know that I slur my words sometimes. I know that because when I speak into my my phone to text somebody. I don't like to text without speaking to my phone. I know that probably dates me and ages me, but because my phone might figure it a little bit too fast for that. So it catches a whole bunch of words that I'm not even saying, and so it's probably because of my pronunciation and whatnot. My I would say my what do you call it? My you know, people from Boston have their way of saying things, and I have my way of saying things, and the phone catches it whichever way they believe you might be saying things. So in any event, and I say Boston because it's more Boston. Anyway, here we are. So try and speak as freely and as possible, knowing that in fact we are here doing this by Zoom, and that it's a lot more difficult to understand you because the speaker catches, the microphone catches most of what you're saying, but not all of it. And if your words aren't clear, it's going to make it even more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you. I moved the camera and the microphone slightly closer. Hopefully that will be helpful.
Thank you.
So the question was, what were my conclusions in regards to the material that I reviewed? My conclusions are that all detailed records are insufficiently precise for the location of a cell phone. Secondly, that the so-called measurement data records that were presented have very, very serious errors within the data. Thirdly, that geofencing evidence algorithms are proprietary and unknown, cannot be verified.
Thank you. So let's do each of those, if we can. I would go quickly on.
But we do understand that just so we know where we're going here, Mr. Shulman, that the expert offered by the state clearly testified that there wasn't one single piece of data that he exclusively used and only used. There was a combination of data that were used and combination of things that were used, yes, and that therefore he used them in combination to be able to arrive at conclusions. So we want to make sure that your expert, in fact, that Mr. Schenk addresses the issue with regard to whether something is used in combination. And in fact, some things were used to corroborate findings in other situations.
All right.
So that's in my mind with the testimony that Mr. Masters gave. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly.
So, Mr. Schenk, can you address the judge's the judge's interest essentially in the fact that Agent Masters' report reflects that he relied on cell phone data and other location data for the purposes of reaching conclusions in his report? Can you discuss why the conclusions that Agent Masters would draw from that approach would be problematic in your view, or would it?
In the sense that the individual pieces that he uses in order to come to his conclusion, I find to be problematic. And specifically, I dealt with the area of the CDR records, which Mr. Masters indicated he did not rely on very, very much. He did rely on the PCMP records very, very heavily in his report and in his maps. And my objection to those is that those are records that are disacclaimed, if you wish, by Sprint in regards to their accuracy, in regards to location purposes, and on the third piece, the Google fencing information, they are represented by proprietary algorithms, which have not, my knowledge, have not been peer reviewed, and therefore I would presume would not meet Daubert standards for admissibility. To the extent that there is other information available, I have no position on, and I don't know to what extent he relied upon them. And I believe there was also video camera information. I have no knowledge or position on that. So those are the 5 pieces that he relied upon, and I'm questioning 3 of those 5 pieces.
Can you explain why you conclude that the call detail records are insufficiently precise of location to be of value in reaching conclusions about the location of a cell phone?
Yes, as the Master said, an RF signal in fact emanates out, goes out to infinity. Obviously, its power level drops, and therefore it may not be usable potentially for communication purposes. However, the National Institute for Standards and Technology that was alluded to earlier has indicated that call detail records, that cell phone handset can connect to a tower at a distance of 35.2 kilometers, which translates out to 21.87 miles. So that is the maximal range that a clear signal can connect to a tower, and you can have, in fact, have a voice communication for at that particular distance. So, given that this 21 miles represents an enormous area that.
Mr. Schenk, and I'm trying to get to the heart of this thing. When Mr. Masters was testifying, you were only interested in finding out, Mr. Schoeneman, what that ability was, not in the towers in Manhattan, but the ones in Laredo. Equally, I want you to stick to the same things with regard to your witness. I'm not talking about what the towers in the flatlands of somewhere in this country, but in those here in this area.
In Laredo, okay.
Thank you.
So let me direct a question to you about that, Mr. Schenk. So the judge is interested in knowing more specifically about cell phone range of cell phone towers in Laredo as opposed to Los Angeles or as opposed to some sparsely populated rural area. Can you speak to whether Agent Masters' report reflects anything about the cell phone range of the towers that he documents or that he reports data from in his report?
To the extent that he delved into the area of drive tests, they would imply a range where a signal would be sufficient in order to provide communication. I believe that he offered.
I'm sorry, Mr. Schenk. In order to provide what? We didn't hear that word.
To provide the distance that in fact that he projected. His estimated guess was that the cell towers in Laredo, Texas, could operate at 3.5 miles approximately.
And Is it your conclusion that that's the maximal distance of a cell phone tower range in Laredo, or is it possible to reach that conclusion at all from Agent Master's report?
To the extent that he implied a shaded area in which he delineated, from his drive test data, that would be the implication. Now, obviously, I would have an objection in regards to that particular drive test data, because it is not the same as what a cell tower network experiences in operational
I don't think this information is
fashion.
very dated, you guys.
But that's a long discussion.
Mr. Schenk, did you hear
Jinx out. It's going to fact check
Agent
this man.
Masters testify that one can use cell phone tower records, which I understand to be essentially call detail records, for the purpose of establishing whether a phone is mobile, moving from one point to another? Can you comment on whether those particular records can be used in that fashion reliably?
No, it cannot be, because the network computer is constantly leveling the amount of traffic and activity across all of its network resources. So if one particular tower gets very, very busy, it will in fact offload that tower to other towers that are nearby that can handle that signal, but will then relieve congestion on the first tower. So a cell phone can be stationary and yet be transferred from one cell tower to another cell phone.
And is it also the case then the cell phone that is moving may have a series of geolocation data that appear to indicate that the cell phone is in fact stationary? Is that also possible, the converse situation?
Perhaps a little bit more problematically. Agent Masters came up with
At least we are together.
if you have activity to the south of a network and the north of a network, the implication is that the cell phone moved. He's almost correct in generality. Yes, I would in fact agree. But there is such a thing as the antennas have characteristics of what they call a front lobe, and they also have which radiates the maximum amount of its energy outward. But they also have what they call side lobes. And if you're fairly near the tower, you even have a rear lobes of energy emanating from a tower. So
Pretty much, Cherry. Yeah.
as I said, Agent Masters is generally correct, except with those
Me too. Early enough lights.
potentially infrequent provisos. So typically we are not certain whether a cell phone is moving just because it changed from one cell tower to another cell tower.
I want to move on to per call measurement data, or I believe to what was called timing advance data. Can you comment on,
Welcome, Gypsy Pro.
well, first, can you just tell us what is per call measurement data?
Per call measurement data is a method that was developed in order to find what they call hotspots in their network. And that is, where is there a concentration of cell phone activity, and does that imply that the network has potentially a service problem in that particular hotspot area? And one technique that the fact that they utilized in order to do this is attempting to locate, they use different sources in order to accomplish that, but the one that Agent Masters focused on was the round trip delay measure, which is a simple measurement, just like a radar that sends a pulse out and then waits for an echo in order to come back. Takes that measures that time interval, divides it by 2, and multiplies it to see that speed of light.
Did you review the per call measurement data in this case specifically?
I did.
And how did you review that?
By looking at the individual records and the progression of those particular records. And what I did is I took the time interval at time T1 and then looked at the next record time, which is time T2, and that time difference is a time interval that I use in order to establish what the difference is between the location data that is provided within the PCMD record. So at time interval 1, we have a particular location. At time interval 2, we have another location. And then I calculated the distance between those two locations and divided it by the time period that it took in order to travel that particular distance. And I found enormous anomalies in regards to the data that in fact was being provided by Sprint within their PCMD record.
You say in your report that you found, from your own review of the PCMD records in this case, known inaccuracies and egregious errors. How many of that kind did you find?
I found, how did I classify an error? If by the technique I just described, if I found that in fact from one location to another location, the speed with which that changed exceeded 125 miles per hour.
This is why, Marie, we understand now.
Which I consider to be virtually impossible or improbable, certainly within the city limits. I found 5,863 errors within the data set that I had analyzed. There were 22,243 records provided, and within those I found, like I said, 5,800 some that were in error.
I'm sharing my screen again, which is a page from your report, and it contains 3 examples of the 5,000 or 6,000 errors of this kind that you identified in the PCMD records. Can you just explain one of these 3 examples for us, and how it is that you can conclude that the PCMD data is in fact inaccurate or erroneous, the data as reported by Sprint?
As I just explained, at a particular moment in time, we have a location where
the judge is yawning.
Sprint believes that the cell phone is located. They actually give a specific latitude and longitude location for that particular phone. And on subsequent measurement, they do the same. If in fact we now determine the time interval, then we know the time interval
Luckily, the jury is not watching this yet.
or for which that the distance translation has in fact occurred.
Rondella, the
So
opposite, please go.
I did that calculation. throughout those 22,000 records. But as I said, I found
Yes, why now, Yaku? Why now?
it's a 5,800 impossible. So the location information provided by IP records has very serious errors.
Can you comment then on the disclaimer that Sprint itself provided when it provided these PCMD records, and what you consider the significance of that disclaimer to be as to using PCMD data to draw conclusions about the location of the cell phone?
Well, my impression of that is that, in fact, they utilize these records for their own network operating purposes, etc., and they are not interested in testifying in support to these particular records, and so therefore, in their disclaimer, they say, for not to use these.
What the hell, Wisconsin? Are you sure at one?
As I've indicated,
You're very optimistic.
Within those records have very, very serious errors.
And is that an error that implicates the reported geolocations in the data?
The defense. Oh, come on.
I would certainly think so. I mean, this is courtroom evidence that's being presented to the court. It's being outed, being records for Prop Spring, and they are prosecution using them in order to prove their case. My position is that these records are hopelessly flawed, and therefore do not belong in the courtroom.
And you specifically, from your own review of these records, identified more than 5,000 errors in the PCMD records, and as many as, in your report, it says 6,979 improbabilities. Is that correct?
Yes. The suggestion was that
This defense
I
made
originally
me
indicated
really
that
like the teacher
if
staff
the
defense
speed
team.
is
They were awesome.
the translational speed from one time period to another time period, it exceeds 90 miles per hour. That's highly improbable.
So you're inferring that there must be some error in the records because,
The
as I
judge is really
understand
rocking
it,
on his
looking
chair
at
now.
two PCMD records that report geolocations and a timestamp, and you're saying essentially
believe so,
that a
Rando.
human being or a cell phone could not travel that distance in the reported time interval. Is that a correct understanding of how you identified errors?
Yada,
or
yada,
what you
yada.
believe to be errors?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Then let's go to finally the Google data.
What's up with the mic?
In your last section of your report, you indicated that the Google location, geolocation evidence or data that Agent Masters refers to in his report is based on a proprietary algorithm that cannot be peer reviewed. Can you explain what you mean by that?
That in fact it is Google's proprietary algorithm, and they are not sharing it. At least that I'm not aware that they are sharing it, and I'm not able, in order to do the same calculations that they do and come up with the same conclusions that they come up with. I have no ability, even in order to do that, because I do not know the procedure and the method that they use for their particular purpose.
So Google does not share this or make it accessible to a third-party analyst like yourself. Is peer review even possible, or verification?
Mr. Grizzly
of the
brought me a
report data?
protein
Is that
shake, you
possible?
guys.
No,
It's like,
it's not.
you need
It's not
this.
possible. It is a proprietary algorithm. that fact that they're not sharing. I mean, the only information that they do share, and of course they can ask for to that is that they base it on the CDR records, which of course is cell tower record, and those have those very, very largest error budget. Which, there are Wi-Fi information that they collect, and the third collection source is in fact the Global Decision Network, GPS, which is highly accurate.
I want to just finally conclude here that Agent Masters testified, I believe, in his testimony, that there's no error rate whatsoever, as I understood his testimony, in using the CSLI methodology. Can you comment on that?
Well, in a general sense, when I would tend to agree, except that there are.
Which one is worse, you guys, that this hearing has taken so long, or that we are all still sitting here listening to it?
Are
we okay?
Whatever. For instance, it is very difficult in order to know how far a cell phone signal that is unobstructed can in fact reach out and provide connection. And as I indicated, National Institute of Standards and Technology has published on two separate occasions, both 2007, 2014, that for GSM networks, that is plus mile. And that's based upon the timing advance that in fact is done within the compression algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this may be getting too technical. Well,
I think he answered your question, and he went on, and you allowed him to go on.
The judge is snarky now. Very snarky.
Right.
Ooh, he's really getting impatient now.
But I'm not sure that I wanted to know of your comment on whether this particular methodology has no error rate whatsoever. That is it always possible to use this technology to locate a cell phone in?
Can you describe what technology you're talking about?
I'm referring to a methodology.
We are not quitting. Yes, true.
Technologies, Your Honor, as I understand.
Which methodology? Because the only methodology, any methodologies that Mr. Because right now your witness is trying to assist the court in determining whether or not Mr. Masters testifies or not. So
and that's it.
Could we direct it to Mr. Masters' use of that technology as opposed to just technology out there that Mr. Masters may or may not have used at all?
Well, Mr. Schenk, you've reviewed Agent Masters' report, and he relies on several different sources of telecommunication information to draw conclusions about whether a cell phone was mobile or stationary.
That's true,
and
Sonia.
its specific location in space. Can you comment on the reliability of that methodology to reach those conclusions?
My opinion is that the sources of information utilized are insufficiently precise in order to provide a location for a phone.
And what about for?
So are you really saying that no one can find the phone using this methodology? Is that what you're saying, Dr. Schenk?
Essentially, yes. That the cold detail records are sufficiently imprecise.
So if I leave my phone at the HEB on a shopping cart, and I go home, and I do find my phone, and it uses Google technology to do that. I don't need to know how they use it, but I know they use it. And I happen to go out there, and it tells me it's there, and I go there and it's there. Does that mean that it's flawed, or does that mean that it just got lucky, or what? What does that mean?
In most instances, yes, the answer is that in fact you got lucky.
So it could have directed me. It could have directed me to.
If you got lucky, is that what he said?
You know, the Walmart parking lot, and even though I had never been to Walmart, maybe I would have thought somebody stole it and took it to Walmart.
Well, Walmart has to come out.
But it didn't. It directed me to the HEB parking lot, where in fact I find my phone. So, but that's just pure luck.
And where did you get the information that led you to that particular?
Well, I'm just saying I use the find. Let's say I use my Find My Phone technology, which is Google technology, right? Is it, or I don't know, is it Apple? Apple uses Google. I'm not sure what it is, but
I'm so glad he said Walmart.
Have you ever seen that app on the phone?
Now we can relate.
Yes, that's an Apple technology.
Yeah.
Right.
So then it finds it, right? At least this is where it was. This is where it is. Or sometimes it's just where it was before it was turned off or whatever.
Always
right?
windy.
But so how does that technology work?
Oh no, it's a long answer.
Well,
is it GPS?
Probably yes. You have to ask Apple in regards to how.
Right, but because they don't. Right, but does that mean that because they don't tell you, because you don't know, does that mean that you should not rely on it, despite the fact that numerous and countless times it's been used and it works?
But that's not an evidence here at this court.
Well, there was evidence by if you remember, I'm sorry I'm asking the question, but there was evidence, Mr. Masters, that in fact said that I've used this type of, maybe not the one I'm talking about, but the one he talked about, used it many times to find phones, to find whoever it was that he said he was finding. And you said, well, he just got lucky on those that he found them with that.
I think
with his methodology.
I think Mr. Masters was exaggerating in regards to the precision in which location can in fact be inferred. Certainly so from call detail records and also from PCMD records. And as we indicated, as far as Google technology is concerned, or for that matter, Apple technology, we have no knowledge.
No knowledge that it could or could not work.
Well, obviously, as you indicated, as far as Apple technology is concerned,
no, I'm just using it as an example. I'm not. Actually, I haven't just lost my
Jason,
phone.
this is a trial, in a trial.
I'm just using it here for you just as an example. I mean, you're just saying with that type of technology, whether it be Google or Apple in that scenario that I gave you can't say yes it works or it doesn't work because you're saying I have no way of testing it because I don't know what algorithm they use.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
I want to clarify something here because I think your Agent Master's report reflects that he considered a number of different types of geolocation data, some of which is GPS satellite based, but very few points of data are of that kind.
There will definitely have to be a certificate that I make out of this situation. So putting it on Patreon, that's where I can share certificates.
Activated for the phone to be
We're surviving this day.
That type of data, is that right?
I'm learning so much.
So if your Google location is turned off, your cell phone is not going to be able to report data of that kind. Satellite data.
Oh, well, yes, that is correct.
But it might still report other types of location data that is not as precise as satellite data.
Your answer is, can you help me out? Is this good or bad? It's nothing.
E911.
It's a waste of time.
Situation if you have a modern phone, a smartphone, that has a GPS total position system chip in it, it can in fact then triangulate and precisely find your phone sufficient enough for emergency confirmation.
Now, if Ms. Hernandez's phone did not have the Google location software either activated on her phone and was reporting
It's pretty bad.
cell phone
503D
connections
count.
to cell phone towers, how precise would that data by itself be in enabling somebody to find that phone?
The phone can be anywhere within 500 square. Phone can be anywhere within 500 square miles, based upon cell tower information. If you know the cell tower and you happen to know
The
the
judge is like
sector,
on the table.
then 1/3 of a circle represents 500 square miles. The entire circle is 1,500 square miles.
What are we whispering? Who's whispering what?
Thank you.
I just want to zoom into the pictures a bit.
Thank you, Mr. Schenk.
Are you going to ask any questions?
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly.
It's like, are you going to ask any questions? Yes, Your Honor, very briefly. Okay, we
Yeah,
can't really
take
see
that
that.
back with you. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for remembering that. He doesn't have to be that close to you either. It can be on the
Yes, we can keep the recorder. I do intend on using it.
Quickly, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Quickly, please.
Mr. Schenk, I want to talk about something that you had testified to earlier. Earlier, you had testified that
I took it off. Were you supposed to leave it on?
I'm sorry, what?
The shared document.
Oh, yes, we were going to keep that on.
Okay, sorry, I took it off. Go ahead and put it back on.
You had testified earlier that at least on one occasion you have testified on the prosecution side. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that was with regards to CDRs and advanced time methodologies?
Only Pena CDR is not the
CDRs. Okay, that's fine. Today, you testified that you believe CDRs do not belong in a courtroom at all.
That's correct.
But you've testified before about CDRs in a courtroom for the state.
That's correct.
All right. And I assume that was for the purposes of proving the case in chief and convicting an individual of some sort of crime.
The individual was in a review process, and then on that particular occasion, we had specific information from the cell tower manufacturer.
Okay, you can stop right there. That's all I needed to know. It seems like an appellate issue. That's not important. I just wanted to know if you were testifying for the state.
Diane, I think
Okay.
you can't, because then the
Now,
defense can say it's a
I
mistrial.
want to talk to you
because
about your report. If
the
we can go
judge
to the
waived
first,
this off or
I'm
whatever,
sorry,
you
this
know?
is page 2 of the
You
report,
gotta go through it.
where it discusses the
You put-
record
you put
and
it-
materials review.
Yes.
This?
I don't know if it's
But
that
like
or
it says,
not, but maybe.
once they get the tricky stuff
It's
out the
probably
way,
not.
it'll get better. Hang in there, people.
Turn it off, see what happens.
Yes, hang in there, people. We're in
I'll
this
just leave
together,
that
okay?
All right.
And why? We're here for
A
the
little bit
victims,
higher, please,
Grizelda
on that,
and
on
Dominic.
the top of page 2. Thank you. Right there's fine. Thank you so much. So for this case, and in generating your report, you reviewed the FBI CAS report that was authored by Special Agent Andrew Masters, the PCMD records of Sprint with regards to Mr. Ronald Burgos-Aviles' phone, and the Sprint's disclaimer file, which was admitted earlier, I believe, as defense's non-jury Exhibit 1. You know that Special Agent Masters' report also utilized Motorola GPS data from the Motorola report that was generated?
I did not review that information.
But that was part of his report.
I did not review that portion
Okay.
of this record.
Okay. That's fair.
They're like, that was part of the report. I didn't review that.
Now,
Oh,
you
dear.
gave an opinion about Google data, but you didn't review the Google data according to your report.
That is correct.
You also didn't review the AT&T records with
Yes.
regards to the victim's phone in this case, but you did give an opinion as to what your beliefs were about those records. Is that correct?
I don't believe I did, but as far as opinion is concerned, the those records that Mr. Masters did not use are hopelessly in error. So
Actually, I don't think so. Started one ever.
I would certainly not
Two.
rely on those.
I'm going to vote 2.
Well, the question was simply, did you review the AT&T records from the victim's phone that were relied on
I
in
did
this?
not.
Okay.
I did not.
All right.
Because I didn't
No
know
need to
location
go
of the
further.
victim.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. That's all I need.
Sorry.
Okay, and finally, Special Agent Masters' report relied on various surveillance footage that corroborates the locations by identifying the defendant's kilo unit that he was driving and issued on April 9th. You also didn't review those videos, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that in order for a phone to ping to a particular tower, it would have to be within the coverage area of the tower it's pinging or having a handshake with?
It's within 21.87 miles? Yes.
Well, that's not the question. I'm talking specifically about coverage area.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, coverage area.
No, I believe what you're talking about is data from a 2014 NIST special publication
right,
800-101
T-Bird
Revision 1 report that talks about the maximum range of the cell tower and the radio frequencies coming out of it being 21 plus miles.
That is correct.
Yes.
As Agent Masters testified, a radio frequency signal goes out and it goes out ad infinitum.
But Special Agent Masters also testified, and you were here to hear that at a certain point, that radio frequency becomes insufficient to connect to a cell tower and to have a voice call or a text message. And so that's why those towers have coverage areas.
And that is correct. And the National Institute of Standards and Technology said that range is 21.87 miles.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up. Are you aware that the author of this report had been reached out to by the FBI with questions as to where they got that 21 plus miles?
Yes, I've heard that story before, and then it goes back to supposedly Wikipedia and all of that. And I've attempted to slay that particular lie by indicating that the compression algorithm that is used in timing advance, in fact, it represents a physics calculation in regards to what that distance is.
Okay, well,
Oh, damn. He's getting impatient now.
may I have two non-jury for States Exhibit 2?
All right, non-jury, what's it going to be? Stakes non-jury 3 and 4 or 2 and 3?
2 and 3, Your Honor.
Okay, well, we can tag that later. We got to go.
Okay, yes, Your
So
Honor.
it's going to be 2 and 3. 2 is going to be the thin document, and 3 will be, you can write on it for now,
3 is going to be
the thicker document.
well, 2 is going to be the thicker document.
I just did it the other way around.
Oh, okay, well, we'll do it that way. 2 is the thinner one, 3 is the thicker one.
You don't have to show it to anybody. Let's go.
Okay. Yes,
It's a
sir.
non-jury.
Well, I have the email message as States non-jury exhibit number 2, showing that the author did reply to the FBI and did in fact say that they retrieved that data from Wikipedia.
So that's 2 and 3. Non-juries 2 and 3 are admitted.
All right, moving along then. And we've already discussed about how your issue in number 1, that CDRs are insufficient precise of location, be of substantive value in a courtroom. We've already discussed how there was 5 independent sources, so I'm not going to touch that anymore. But
Well, you did. You just touched on it.
Well, what I am going to get into
Oh,
is
dear.
on your point in number 2, the PCMDs, and how you allege in your report that they contain serious errors. And I want to go to them. If we could go to page 4 of the report with error example 1, error example 2, and error example 3, please. Thank you so much. So the errors that you're listing here are of the GPS locations, and then you give the latitude and longitude coordinates, and you say that those are erroneous. Is that correct?
No, I'm not saying that the records are erroneous. That's what's in the records. I'm saying that it is not possible for the cell phone in order to move from one record to the next record at 281 miles per hour.
All right.
Okay, fair. But you do know that in reviewing the Sprint's key to understanding the
watched
PCMD
the
report,
teacher's solo?
at the very bottom, and this would be
But we streamed the whole
defendant's
trial.
non-jury exhibit 1, I believe,
Where were you?
that they say the
Thank you.
latitude and longitude found on PCMD reporting is not historic GPS for this device. Yet you, the expert here testifying today, indicate that it is GPS, but it's not. Could you
That is
clarify?
correct.
Could you clarify
That's
what
correct.
you mean by that?
It is not GPS location. That is correct.
Okay.
Hello,
And are you
Tina
also
Peter
aware
Bronzo.
that Special Agent Master's report did not include this GPS location, or, well, I won't even call it that, but this longitude and latitude recording?
And these are the records that, in fact, that he utilized in his report, because these are the data sets that, in fact, are part of his report.
Yes,
So, and I'm attempting to indicate that these records are in part flawed. And I'll give you three examples.
Well, it's okay.
Mr. Schenk,
I don't need
Mr. Schenk, Mr. Schenk, hold on a sec.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
I will need you to answer the questions and only the questions, sir. All right? You've had plenty of opportunity during the direct examination to expand on a lot of what you're saying. Here on cross, I need you just to answer the question.
In fact, I'll make it simpler. Let's just do yes and no. So, you are aware then, because you have reviewed his report, that Special Agent Masters did not, in his report, utilize these longitude and latitude coordinates?
I'm not aware that he's not using them.
Well, he testified on the stand earlier
supposed to
that
be
he
so
did not use them. Do you recall that?
He's indicated to use multiplicities of sources. This is one source.
Well,
All right, let's move on. Next question.
next question then, Your Honor.
So
Are you
still back-
also aware
this is still the hearing,
that if
Alexander.
you plotted these out onto a map, they would all fall within the band that Andrew Masters in his report did utilize?
That was my presumption, yes.
Okay. Do you use Google or Apple Maps to navigate around town where you live or anything like that?
I do.
And you are aware that Google, with regards to its
I think so,
GPS,
Shauna.
does have patents explaining the technology that they utilize in that, correct?
Yes, I'm aware that they have patents.
So it's
2
not
to
a
3 weeks.
proprietary technology that nobody has access to and nobody can peer review and nobody can read and understand. They have patents in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office showing how this technology works.
I'm not aware.
Moving on. And are you aware, in your report, you indicated that, again, you didn't review the Google data, but you did make an opinion about it, and you referred to this Google geofencing evidence. Are you aware that the Google data set that was provided in this case had absolutely zero geofencing evidence?
What was the Google records that in fact were utilized in this Master's report?
Well, I don't care to testify, but I believe it's GPS data, not geofencing. If I'm not mistaken, those are two different things.
That is correct. The global positioning satellite is very, very different from geofencing, and to indicate Now, the geofencing in
I don't need objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. I don't need a narrative.
I think I've heard enough. Any other questions so we can close out this hearing? Okay, and so then the request is by thank you, Mr. Schenk. The request then was from the defense that we should strike, that the court should strike any efforts to have Mr. Masters testify on behalf of the state as an expert in what the report is and what the opinions that he gives out on what they call the report, which is a PowerPoint presentation. And so would you care to just give me an argument on that so we can finish this out?
Sure, Your Honor. So
What?
I believe we bear the burden in this
Okay,
case.
I don't need argument from you all on that end.
Yeah,
That's
we bear
fine.
the burden, Your Honor. I think
I don't need argument from you all on that end.
Yes, Your
If you want, you can rebut on his argument, but I really, I know exactly where y'all coming from, and I don't need. Yes.
So, Your Honor, the Daubert test is what we're asking the court to apply, and it applies here when an expert is testifying on the basis of some kind of scientific technology. The technologies in this particular case were developed by cell phone companies for the purposes of managing their network, identifying locations where to build new cell phone towers to enhance their coverage and so forth. They specifically disclaim, and that's the disclaimer that we offer to the court, that it's appropriate to use this data, PCMD data, for the purpose of identifying a location of a cell phone. That's an explicit disclaimer, and law enforcement is using it precisely for that disclaimed purpose. So that's the first thing, Your Honor, that the data has been developed for a specific purpose.
Maybe they just don't want to get sued if it happened to be wrong.
Well, they actually say that it is wrong. They make a representation in that disclaimer that the data is erroneous, there are errors in it, and that they cannot explain, they will not certify it. And that gets to another factor, actually, among the Daubert factors, which is whether it can be peer-reviewed, whether it can be tested. Because this is a proprietary...
Well, I'm not sure that, in fact, that's what the Daubert, it's a factor, but it's not an exclusive factor. It's not the determining factor. It's not, you know what I'm saying? Like y'all are making it sound like if it's not peer-reviewed, it's gone. And that's not what Daubert actually stands for.
No, it doesn't, Your Honor. But what Daubert did was the court said that there were 5 factors for the court to weigh. And the 5 factors were empirical testing, peer review and publication, error rate, maintenance of standards, and general acceptance. Okay?
It's definitely generally accepted, right?
Not
Plenty of
within
articles on it.
Not within the telecommunications community, because Sprint, which developed these technologies, say they cannot be used for the purpose that the FBI is using them. They are their engineers are the ones that develop.
But maybe they mean they cannot be used alone for that purpose.
Well, we're not aware of any peer review, and I don't think the state has offered any articles that are peer reviewed. They've come up with one article published by one engineer and an investigator,
which talk about PCM.
But it's not a peer. It's not. There's no.
So do you think that the magazine IEE or the organization would put in an article on in their journal that was a bunch of junk?
I think.
Do you think that's what would happen? That's what these journals stand for.
I think journals publish articles that are the views of the authors. They've identified one journal article that doesn't actually conduct any sort of empirical study of any of these technologies. It's just simply a review of the various kinds of approaches. It approves of some, it disapproves of others.
And in that article, they also talk about cherry biometrics.
Yes.
And they talk about the way they do things and the way they use things, and that it says in that article, it says here it is.
It's got its Texas Cowboys mug again today.
When they talk the areas of overlap, they sort of, I think they sort of chuckle at the fact that cherry biometrics says you can't use this for that purposes, and then another company comes in and says that in fact you should use that for that purpose. So in other words, that there is all these different types of opinions with regard to that type of thing. It says, while arguments put forward by experts like Cherry Biometrics, which boil down to a particularly random selection of the best server among many sectors, are certainly false, there are locations where at the same spot a phone may be served by two, and in some cases more than two sectors. And Mr. Brown talked about that particular situation, and so did Mr. Schenk. It says here, another continuous point in U.S. courts is whether a conical, a pie or wedge shape should be used to represent sector coverage. Experts such as Cherry Biometrics and ZX, Section X, have argued in court that because of overlaps, the sector coverage should be modeled by an appropriately scaled antenna radiation pattern in the dB units. However, that these two companies use these same patterns to reach totally opposite conclusions. It says Cherry Biometrics to claim that nothing can be said about the locations of the phone. Section X to provide allegedly very accurate estimates of the possible locations of the phone.
Your Honor, I'll just point out.
In that article, by the way.
I only had the most brief opportunity to skim through this.
So did I.
article, but I would just say for the record
Fury
that this
wants no
article
part of this.
is critical of FBI testimony as well. It's not an unequivocal endorsement of how the FBI has been using this technology.
I can't believe
That's-
they ended this
I
hearing.
can tell that, and I can.
That was
offer
meant to
the
be
court,
45 minutes,
excerpts
max
from
an hour.
this as well that are critical of FBI testimony using cell phone data for these purposes.
There is no question that there has been a lot of, and I don't know if FBI, but a lot of testimony from in many courts across. In fact, probably even in these courts here in this county
Yes,
early
Mr.
on,
Burgos, are you enjoying
when
this?
that sort of expert analysis was being given to a jury that in fact made some erroneous conclusions that in fact the cell phone tower that was the closest was in fact the one that was catching that phone. That is not what Mr. Brown is saying. I mean, Mr. Masters is saying here today. In fact, he said that it was the best quality and the best, I don't know what else, about that. And I don't think that your expert disagreed with that at all either.
No, I think both experts agree that cell phone.
It's not the closest one. It's the one that provides the best
one. It's the one with the strongest signal, which is precisely why.
strongest and best quality, I think.
Right, which is precisely why cell phone tower records, and just to be clear, we were referring to those throughout this hearing as call data records,
This
I believe.
defense attorney has more
Those are
stamina
cell phone
than
tower
Eduardo.
records. In other words, they don't provide any information about the location of the phone. They provide information about the cell phone, location of the cell phone tower, and one has to infer from that about an area, a broad area, in which the cell phone could be. And that's all one can conclude from those records unless one uses the PCMD data. And that is the data that Mr. Schenk found by comparing, and I don't know if this illustration was clearer, but the way that I understand that he is able to identify 5,000 or 6,000 errors is by comparing consecutive PCMD data reports, and
It's
each one
interesting how-
contains geo-coordinates as well
The
as a
messy bum lady,
timestamp.
I don't know what else to call it, I'm so sorry. I
And he
don't know.
calculates basically could the phone...
Right, but that's not what
Sitting across the table today.
what Mr. Masters did in his calculations. He didn't use the geo points that Mr. Schenk
Maybe it didn't look
used
good to the public.
to calculate the particular movements. He used another part of the data for that.
He relies on PCMD data in his report.
But not in the calculation that was made of the longitude and latitude that was made by Mr. Schenk. He relied on another part of the data for that portion.
I think that the point...
Mr. Schenk makes it sound like if that was the exclusive item that in fact Mr. Masters used, but in fact Mr. Masters didn't use that for that particular calculation.
I think the point that Mr. Schenk is making, and this is substantiated by Sprint's disclaimer,
is that the data can't be relied on and it's erroneous. They won't stand by it themselves, the way it's reported. And he's been able to show that the data, as reported by Sprint, must be erroneous because human beings and cell phones can't travel these distances.
See, you're sticking to the same calculation, which I already told you was not in fact used by Mr. Masters.
The data.
I'm sorry. Try not to interrupt me, not just because you shouldn't, but because the court reporter can't catch both of us at the same time. Yeah.
He relies on the data that Sprint says is erroneous and that they do not stand by. It's in his report, it is used, and it is necessary really for him to reach any conclusions at all about location because the call data records are insufficient because the only information they have is the cell phone tower. One cannot conclude anything from the location of a cell phone tower other than the phone is just in the general vicinity. It could be a very large distance.
Yeah, and you're arguing something that I don't think that Mr. Masters actually said that he could do.
No, but in order to draw any conclusions at all, he has to rely on the PCMD data. And the point is, Mr. Schenk has reviewed that data and identified 5,000 to 6,000 egregious errors in the way that that data is reported. It is absolutely critical, as I understand it.
The point was that, however, he did not go directly to the analysis that was made by that particular information in the manner it was used by Mr. Masters. He just used just generally to provide his points on other issues, but not specifically on those. And in fact, he also missed out on a lot of other data that was used by Mr. Masters to do the same thing. So I appreciate your argument. I don't need a rebuttal from the state or a reply. Your motion to exclude Mr. Masters' testimony as a expert in this particular narrow area will be denied, and your motion to exclude a portion of whatever testimony you were trying to keep out is also denied.
Motion denied.
Thank you.
Daubert.
It is 1 o'clock. The jury's probably walking in. I don't know how we're going to do it. Did you all make arrangements? No, right, to be able to get a meal? So,
free lunch for the jury.
can you find out what we can do in terms of for the the defendant and you all as well? Send me the bill. Yeah, we're gonna need about 45 minutes or so. So
About an hour.
let's see what we can do. Keep him here until maybe we can get something quickly over here.
Get him, man.
Thank you. Oh, wait, give me a second until we find out. Can you coordinate with those that might be open over here? The door. All right, thank you.
All right.
Oh my word, that was what a morning, huh? Was it riveting, you guys? It was riveting stuff. I mean, thank you for being here. No one anticipated it would be this long. It was meant to be a half an hour to 45-minute hearing, and it turned into how many hours now? I mean, the morning session. The morning session was taken up by the Daubert hearing, and the motion was denied, thank goodness. So the FBI special agent can testify, and so can the defense's witness as well, Mr. Schenk. So we will be put through that again. We're going to watch it again when the jury's in the room. So prepare yourself for that. That means we all need a break right now, because we need to go and get that stamina, don't you think? Kitty Koo says, go get your supper. And Mr. G, he's being so nice right now. He's busy cooking, you guys. Mr. Grizzly, oh my word. He brought me a protein shake, and now he's like, okay, I'm just going to make a little bit of dinner. And they're like, what? What is happening here? I love it. So I'm going to go take a break too. Everybody get your strength. We got to get ready for when this jury comes in, and get ready for the afternoon session. Let me quickly make sure that this stream leads you to that one, okay? So stand by. Everybody stand by. I want to give you the link so that you don't miss it. Make sure that you are subscribed, okay? Make sure you subscribe with the bell on. When you see the feed, the next one, say notify me so that you do not miss it. So let's do this. So here we go. First, I'm going to post the link here for you. There it is, okay? Then, what I'm going to do now is make sure that this stream, or I'll try my best for it to lead you to that one. Okay, so either click the link, find it on my homepage, or let it lead you there. Okay, there's someone here in court. I'm just watching to see what are they doing now. Okay, this one should redirect you to that one. Hold on. There we go. Okay, and then I'll see you in, I don't believe it's 45 minutes, but maybe in 45 minutes. The time right now is 12:52 Texas time, so 8 minutes to 1. And I mean, the judge, when they were like, about half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm thinking 2 is when they'll be back. But I'll be monitoring from 1:30 already. As soon as it's on, we'll be here, okay? That's why. Make sure you subscribe with the bell on. You don't want to miss it. I'm sure it'll be very interesting, especially now that we've watched this whole hearing. Let's see how it goes when the jury is in the room. So thank you so much, moderators. Thank you so much, patrons, members, everyone. Really appreciate it. Welcome to all the new subscribers, and I'll see you in the next one, okay? Bye.